Hello, hello. Welcome again to
He
another
can't dance.
Humpday Q&A.
Neither can he.
Shush. Anyway, how's everyone doing? Good, I hope.
My 3D print just crashed. There we go. Stop.
Next time. Hey, look, Dash can join us. There we go.
Yeah. I'll print a dash someday.
So we've got a lot to talk about. Let's go through let's just get going, right? So let's jump into the bits we need to do. So do's and don'ts.
There we go.
Jump straight in.
Be nice. Be constructive. Be respectful. This isn't Reddit. We have standards. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Don't advertise or promote your business. Only we can do that. Don't spam by asking the same questions over and over again. Every time you ask a question, we put it at the bottom of the list. If you ask it again, we move it from where you were in line back to the bottom of the list. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Come on, this is basic common sense. If you get banned from here, don't forget we're all friends among the people who run things like Discord and Slack. So if you're dumb enough to get bounced from here, you probably won't be able to log into there anymore either. And last but not least, have fun.
Indeed, have fun. So my name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader and CTO of Dev Angels London. You can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
I am Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader, organizer of GDG Cleveland. Word is I hide under the stairs and write some code with Dev Angels London. And like many of us, I have a side gig called Good Dog Apps.
And we have a Randall join us. Randall.
Hey, hi, everyone. Hi, Scott. Hi, Simon. Good to see you guys again. Another one of those weekly shows. Wonderful things
Good
to hear. I am Randall Schwartz. I have been a Flutter developer since very, very early on, and I've been a Google developer expert for the areas of Dart and Flutter. And I'm also, for this show, the manager of the question and answer area there, the live chat. I'm watching in that chat to see if you put Q: in front of your statement. If you do, I treat that as a question for us or our guests. So please put Q: in front of your questions. Otherwise, I'll just consider it random chat, which also happens. Thank you, everybody, for chatting with each other as well. Makes it a lot more fun for me to watch. So thanks. And I'll try to answer a few of the questions as well.
Sorry, a lot of times you guys are answering your own questions back and forth. Somebody will answer someone else's question before we even have a chance. So if you ask a question, somebody answers it in chat, don't be surprised if we don't bother bringing it up because it's already been handled.
Sure.
And we also have a John with us. John, welcome to the stage. Hey, John. You're muted. Dun, dun, dun.
Beginner's mistake.
Yeah, of course, all the time. Yep, right. So can't have a meeting without somebody doing that.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So John Wesley, I'm a architect with Microsoft. I've been doing Flutter since way back in the beginning. I have a handful of personal apps that I build and a couple of niche little apps that bring me a few dollars a month and keep me busy in the Flutter area and hanging out with you guys and attending conferences and all that fun stuff.
Word is you might have had something to do with the ability of Flutter to run on foldables.
Yeah, so the team that I work on did contribute back to the Flutter SDK a bunch of code to enable media query properties for being able to detect if there's a hinge and all those fun things that help you build better apps on a foldable or the way we like to talk about is not necessarily foldable, but large screen devices because it'll work, whether it's a foldable or just a really big screen like a Samsung Fold or a tablet or whatever. Yeah.
Because it's more about like putting two apps side by side or two panels of navigation, that kind of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really the big difference between, our device, the Duo, which is a 2-screen device, and a Fold is just that. We've done work in the operating system to take 2 screens and make them look like one, but we're doing all the work for you. So we had to build some stuff into the framework to be able to handle that so that you as a developer don't have to. And make it look good and work well. And the way we did it, it just translates very well into those larger devices that are actually one pane of glass and can interpret everything.
Silly question. I have been getting questions now and then about doing Flutter on split screens. basically two separate screens that might not even just fold.
Mm.
They might even be separate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that could apply in such case?
That'd be a little tougher. I mean, there you're talking about, like in theory, you could do an app that you could span across two screens. But then again, that's just one window across both. When we get kind of multi-window support for desktop apps, then you could get to that area. So some of the code might be applicable, but I think a lot of it would be something that's going to have to be thought out and done differently.
Right. Randall, have you got any announcements? What have you been seeing recently?
Not really, although I am pretty excited by the fact that things are moving forward on both the Dart and Flutter sides. We're getting a lot more commits every day. I tell you, I watch those commits. It's just amazing going through that stuff. I'm trying to think of anything else that's unusual in the other packages that I watch on a regular basis. I do want to say that for my primary client right now, I have completed migrating about 60 classic providers over to RiverPod, and it was exciting. I had to do it incrementally, like a little bit. The code always had to work after every check-in, every couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, how do you get some of it being providers and some of it being RiverPod? Oh man, what a mess. But I figured out transitional ways, and if I am available for hire, if somebody else wants me to do that for them. So I do have plenty of expertise and experience in this area now.
I did what was that migration we did, Simon? Flutter 1.2 up to what, like
something like that.
Something.
It was like one of the very before null safety. It was one of the really early ones.
It was painful.
To take it from there to now, basically, it was
it was not null safe, and we had to take it all the way back up.
But to be honest, like, it's quite funny. The app has been out there working just fine, and actually, once you see like, oh, there's a crash bug, right? There's a potential crash. There's an issue. It's like lint check suddenly switched on. It's like, whoa, okay. I was just going to briefly mention, just to clarify, that none of us work for Flutter, none of us work for Google. We're just community. Yep. We always want to say that just to make sure there's no confusion here. We wear Flutter tops because we got them at conferences and those fun things. But
the Flutter team sends us cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like our dashes.
Yeah. Elijah, I won't say you can't, but I wouldn't try it. I'd start over from scratch.
Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I guess
somebody's asking about migrating a GetX app out of GetX.
Yeah.
The problem is it's not. Sorry. The problem with that is that it's not just RiverPod. It's not just RiverPod, right? Like, it's not just that one thing. Yeah. It's all of the other framework things that they've decided kind of like hacking around that, right? And it's like, at that point, it's like, you might as well just rewrite it, right? And re-architect from the ground up the way. To be honest, it depends on how big the app is, and as Randall said, sometimes you have to be half and half or progressive about what you're doing, screen at a time or a section at a time or something. But yeah, like trying to migrate something like that normally involves rewriting because it's just so intrinsically linked to itself.
And one thing, it's not a rule, but you can think of it as Scott's guideline. The single responsibility principle is very important for methods, but it should probably, in my opinion, be applied to packages as well. Your package should only be responsible for one thing. That way, if it goes south, you only have to rework one thing. In the case of something as big as GetX, if you need to try to move away from GetX, you're in deep trouble. So, because it's wired into everything, which means you have to redo everything.
Yeah,
and that alone is just no. Yeah. So, I think Randall.
We lost our.
Randall had to step away, but we can jump onto some of the questions that have been already been asked.
There we go.
Yes, sorry,
Feedback.
my earbuds, my brand new earbuds fell out of my ears again. I've got the wrong size of adapter, I guess, and so they keep falling out. So I'm back on my previous earbuds for a little while until I figure out what's wrong with the size. Anyway, I think I'm back.
We may as well get started,
questions.
Huh?
Yeah.
Unless we got something else.
No.
So all right, let's roll. How do I use Docker Compose files in Flutter?
Probably not in
I don't
Flutter,
know that you would use Docker in. You might be able to use Flutter in Docker.
Right.
Is that?
Well, I mean, you use so Docker Compose allows you to compose multiple Docker containers together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're really just asking, how do I use Flutter with Docker? And the answer to that is, I mean, you would have to have all of the library. You can do it. I mean, are you asking Dart or Flutter? Because I can't see a direct purpose in why you might want to do that in a graphical environment using Docker to contain things. You can, but it does mean that all the dependencies that Flutter have, now you can find them. You would have to use a what's the tool called? The one time that I want to find the tool, I can't find it. There's a tool, you can go look this up, that examines a application, tells you all the linked libraries, all the libraries that it needs, and all the dependencies it has, and then you can then ship those in your Docker script inside your Docker container. But I think it's a bit more complicated than that, to be honest. I've never actually tried running a graphical application from inside a Docker container. I would assume that it needs access to X windows and other things you might need to port forward.
This might be another one of those cases where people say Flutter, but they really mean Dart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Dart is the language. Flutter is all about the things you can see. Flutter is not the code you're writing. Dart is the code you're writing. Flutter is the framework you're using to make the pretty things on the screen. So, and I wasn't giving Lauren side eye. I was giving a question over here side eye.
What you're probably missing on the to those that are actually let's see if this comes through. Hang on. There we go. So this is the functions framework for Dart. This is actually used for cloud functions, but also the way it works is you package up your your cloud functions in Dart into a Docker container, and then it ships on Cloud Run. But the key here is if you go look at the repository and the examples, you'll find something like hello, and here's a lovely Docker file, and this shows you here how to package up. For example, package up your application for shipping. So this actually is a two-step. So this actually builds your, uses the Dart stable release to build your program, and then you ship the scratch one with copying over your final program, basically, that you'll compile with Dart. But yeah, this is all open. I'll pop a link to that template in the chat here for anyone. But yeah, you can just compile it and run it on a server.
There we go. All righty. All of my projects have used material design. How about your projects? The same? Most.
Yeah.
Just because it's what we're familiar with, it's what's easiest. A lot of apps don't release to iOS for a lot of different reasons. But if you are releasing to iOS, you usually will want to have the ability to use Cupertino in there.
Yeah, and I like to tell people, instead of coming up with your own design, I mean, Google has spent tons and tons of money on their material team to come up with this design. And they've had, user interface experts figure out that this is how a button should look, or this is how a radio button should operate. And you shouldn't try to second guess that much money having been spent on this.
Yeah.
You should default to that. I tell people, in fact, just yesterday I was chatting with somebody on Discord, and somebody was saying, how do you get the radio buttons to look like check boxes? And I go, no, you don't want to do that.
Radio buttons.
Yeah, right. And so you don't want to do that because it sends the wrong signal to people who are used to using all these other user interfaces and have a particular style of understanding now. And here's what you do. They said, but my boss says it's supposed to be this way. And I go, okay, great. Take your boss over to material.io and show him that site. Show them that Google has spent millions of dollars to make this website and do these design works. Yeah. And right next to it, there's Flutter for code for how to make that.
Yeah. So just what's interesting on that website, it literally has do's and don'ts. It has the reasoning behind all the decisions. It's all like in the design guidelines, right? Mainly, I'd say don't do that because radio buttons and checkboxes are completely different UI components. And to have radio buttons appear like checkboxes, I think the confusion there is, you want to be using checkboxes, not radio.
Yeah, right.
What happens if you try to select more than one checkbox?
Right.
It'll drive you crazy.
And it won't let you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that would drive me nuts.
So a radio button. So those that don't know that are listening to this, a radio button are like the circles with the dot in for a selection to indicate a selection. So you might have three going down the screen, and with a bit of text next to each one. Select one of these, and when you select one, it deselects the rest. So you can only ever have one selected. So it's a single choice from multiple choice. Whereas a checkbox is multiple choices added together, right? So you can choose any number of those things added together. Now, you can make checkboxes act like radio buttons if you really wanted to, but I'm sure that would drive people insane.
Good point there.
Yeah.
Also,
point. Yeah.
Americans with Disability Act, so people who have disabilities. Also, though, we've been talking about material design because it's what we know, but let's not totally diss Apple. They do have human interface guidelines that are very much the same thing. And a good example of the need for this, one of Elon Musk's companies a few years ago changed their interface. And if you noticed it, there was something near the edge, and it was so tiny that you couldn't trigger it. Well, that's called a touch target size. And that is specified, I believe, also in human interface guidelines as well as material design. Yeah. Your touch, the area you touch for something, must be a minimum size. Okay. And that is so you don't drive the user absolutely insane. And one other quick point on this.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry, just last one to close up here. Shout out to Michael and Chris if you're watching. We had an interesting conversation about this recently, and the basic idea is that the user should be able to pick up your app and use it without thinking about it. If the user has to take time to learn your app, you're going to get uninstalled. People don't have time or patience for it.
It's the same thing. I'll give an example here. I'll just give you a brief example on this. UX is that it should guide you into what you should be doing by animation, by feel, by consistent iconography. Now, a good example of this is let's say you had a to-do. You could make a to-do app where you long press on the screen to get to any action, right? Literally, no buttons or icons. It's just a to-do list, and you long press on the to-do item, you can delete it. And if you long press on the blank area at the bottom, let's say it lets you add. Now, no one on their right mind is going to find those actions to press them. That is bad UX. Right.
Yeah.
So this is why these sort of guidelines exist.
And if you need to have onboarding screens with a tutorial, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah. You need to use a 3-button or 3-finger scroll to activate this particular item. Let me figure that out sort of intuitively. Yes. I was just going to say for the kids in the audience that don't know why radio button is named that. On really old cars, your radio.
Oh my God!
Buttons.
But then they should be rectangular, Randall, and they should get like shorter when you push them.
I know. Let me finish the story. You push one of them, and the other ones physically popped back out, and that was the way you picked your radio station back when there were only 4 or 5. and in the city, the entire city. So
like the
yeah,
buttons on
that's
your
where the
blender.
name comes from. That's where the name comes from. It's from us old geezers that used to have radios in our dash that had push buttons. Yes.
There are some people who don't understand the concept of AM,
Oh,
unless you're
yeah.
baseball fans, in which case you
That's
listen to AM all the time.
No.
Right,
Oh, in America, that's the morning time, right? AM.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Right. Oh dear. Come on, let's carry on here.
Moving
In the
on
evening in
here.
the
Let's see,
UK.
where are we at?
Next question.
Yes.
Two-parter.
Please.
My app is using canvas.draw vertices, passing in my vertices. I would like to create my vertices using the vertices.raw method in an isolate because it requires processing. Is this impossible? Because vertices are part of the Dart UI package, which can only be used in the main isolate. Look
You
at
are correct,
Simon.
sir.
Matt,
I have
nice work, man. You really did your homework.
I have thought with this exact same problem doing my 3D renderer with using draw vertices that there's a lot of work that I want to offload and I want to change, and obviously it's really infuriating that like this actual model. It's the reason why is basically it's a model object that contains floats. It should not be intrinsically linked to the UI package, I don't think. But this is because I think it uses native wrapper, which gives it a native component attached to it. Anyway, the key to this is you can just make your own model object, allocate those float lists for colors and positions and so on and so forth. Do all that on your isolate, then hand that model object you've made back to the main thread, and then it can just take those members and put them straight into a vertices object and handle that. A vertices object is not an expensive object to create. It's the lists inside that are the expensive object to create. So do your lists in the background isolate, hand them over to the front back to your main thread, convert them then into your vertices, and then hand them off to your canvas draw vertices. Done.
Okay, and we have someone asking the same question again and again. And it looks like it was just answered, or no. So yeah, I'm not going to worry about that one. All right. Any advice for side gigs? What would you do differently if you had to start over again? I would do two things. Number one, I would make a bootstrap, which is basically I would take a starter project and I would make my own skeleton. I would put in RiverPod. I would put in JSON serializable, shared preferences. What else? What else are we using every single? Some HTML.
Probably some basic screen layouts and stuff. Yeah.
FP Dart.
Yeah. FP Dart. Put all of that into one thing, and then that's your bootstrap, and set it aside so that you can start new projects with that. But then the first project I would make with that is anything. Just make something, a to-do list. Who cares? Yes, people have done 1,000 to-do lists.
The de facto to-do list.
Releasing it's not the point. It should just be
RSS
your
reader.
GitHub so people can look at your code. So it's a code example.
Does anyone know what RSS actually is anymore?
Well, what? Oh, RSS?
What?
RSS feed.
Yeah.
They used to be like, I remember when every website had to have an RSS feed, and you had the icon pop up in the browser. It was like, oh my god, I need to subscribe to this RSS feed for this website so I can get notifications from the website.
I still consume about half of
right.
I still consume about half of my information of a timely manner on RSS.
It's still
feeds.
used. It's
yeah.
Podcasts. Yeah. All podcasts use it. It's still used, but it's just like it's no longer a user-facing kind of piece, right?
It's just an API now. You're just
And it was totally backwards because it was every single consumer polling every single supplier, which was a matrix model that couldn't possibly scale, and yet it tried to, and it did a pretty good job, actually.
I think at the time it was just what we had available, right? Right. Before we get completely off topic here, I mean, advice on side gigs. Would you do anything different to start over again? To be honest, I'm not one for making this kind of like project starting point with all these libraries or something like that and put it to one side. I'm using. For me personally, I feel like it would change. Like things change. Your your taste changes and what libraries you like. The libraries change, more packages come along, things change. So for me, I try and just stick with something new. Also, there's as a developer, you refine your concepts as the more you develop, right? So the more that you work on things, the more you structure your code, the more you create patterns out of and of behavior out of the trying to solve the problems you're trying to solve. These kind of stay with you. Next time you work on a project, you're going to work out a new, better way of doing what you did before. So that's what I'd say about sort of like that. On advice on side gigs, I'd say take some side gigs. Do as long as you're building something, right?
Yeah.
Constantly build, work on something, have targets you want to meet, even if it's just like, as I said, make a to-do list. Like another one is like you see something in an app, like a little animation, or there's some functionality that you saw. How did they do that? Research it, implement it yourself. You've learned something from that, right? And you've probably learned all like the stack of things that had to happen underneath, right, to make that do what it does. Let's say receiving push notifications. What's in that? How does that work? You can go through the inner workings of it all and try and recreate yourself.
If you're doing some sort of market analysis that's predictive, would that be a psychic side gig?
I do want to point out one thing, though. Okay, if Simon had to do something different, if he had to start over again, it would probably involve changing a diaper more often, because Simon has been doing this for so long, he can't remember when he started. John, how about you?
No, I mean, to Simon's point, there was, if we look back at early days of Flutter, right, a lot of people were kind of taking that concept of find something that's done someplace else and go figure out how to do it in Flutter as a way to learn.
Yeah.
But then, also to what you guys have all said, putting stuff like that together and putting it out in GitHub as something you can show people, or,
right,
part of an app that you can build. My side gig is pretty straightforward. I decided I needed to build an app because the app that existed for this particular use case, which happens to be around volleyball, it just plain out sucked. Was unusable and nobody liked it, but it was the only thing available for all these different volleyball tournaments that I'd go to. So I built an app, and that has turned into a side gig. I monetize it through ads. It's very small, but it gives me a few dollars. And then that has now turned into a second project because I had a coach from a university here come to me and say, hey, I've got this idea. I've got this thing I do on paper. I'd love to do it on a tablet. Could you build it for me? And so I've been building that for him as just a little side gig. I don't have tons of time because I have a 9 till whenever I get done every day job. But the little bit of time that I do have to do it, I do it. And the volleyball stuff was easy because I spend weekends in the gym watching volleyball and coaching and reffing. And when I'm not doing that stuff and I have an hour here downtime, I can work on the app. So
there you go. So you work 9 to 11, right? And that ain't 2 hours a day?
Yeah.
Hopefully the salary is worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It pays the bills.
Sure.
All righty. Let's see.
You got more questions? I'm sure we
Mike?
do.
No.
This isn't the one about getting somebody on, is it? I saw that one fly through there.
Yeah. Mike? No. Just mainly because it's diverged from Flutter so much, it's not even Flutter anymore. So, moving on.
Yes.
On Flutter Web, how can we detect and prevent a user from logging in from 2 separate tabs or windows, or even launching 2 instances of the same app in desktop?
So,
IP.
I can tell you how you do this on desktop. In fact, on Windows specifically, is that you get a global mutex. You get a named global mutex. Basically, the operating system holds a global namespace, and you have one uniquely named for your application, and it claims it when it first starts, and it gets released when it exits. And therefore, if an app tries to start up again, what you can actually do is, if it already exists, you can actually then communicate with the other app using IPC, and then actually highlight the window, or even better, go look at the get the process ID of the other application and give it the focus. And this way, if they already have the app open, they're trying to open it again, the current window comes to the foreground. That's kind of how you do it on Windows, at least. But detect or prevent a user from logging in. That's
I don't know.
That's
I don't know the purpose of this. Is this to prevent them from using a licensed piece of software, multiple instances?
Yeah.
Or is this to make sure that they can communicate with each other so that they have shared experience between the two logins? There's all sorts of ways that this could be used, but your question didn't say which one.
Well, if they're trying to prevent them from logging in, it's not communicating between them, right? It's more that
it's one of the, but I don't know. It could be either one. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
He said,
okay, but I mean, even Firebase auth, wouldn't there be a way to
that they're already?
I don't know. Give the device a name each time it's in. Each time you install, create a device name or get a device name, and then Firebase auth or whatever auth would not allow two different devices to be logged in. You have to log out of one first.
So what
it would automatically log the other one out.
Yes, so you can do that. So first of all, I missed the bit at the beginning that says on Flutter Web. So you're specifically saying like two instances of like two tabs in the browser and stuff like that, and having that prevented. You can only have one instance. If that's what you're trying to achieve here, all you do is when you connect up, you're going to make a request. You can actually make that request automatic to there's a before sign-in, which is like a blocking thing you can actually do on so on Firebase console, if you go to the authentication tab and go to the end tab advanced, you can enable identity platform. It's an upgrade. It means it's paid for, so just let you know, but it allows you to enable a blocking function on signing, and this allows you to deny signing based on maybe the account's got some settings wrong or other whatever reasons you want, right? And in the case that you're saying is once they try to sign in, what you do is you revoke previous auth tokens, and you can actually do that in the library, in the auth Firebase auth library for server, and that means that the previous auth tokens become invalidated, so that the new one they're given is the only valid auth token. In which case, the previous tab that they were on would start getting permission denied on all the requests, and then you can log them out. Conversely, you can just have it as when the app becomes active, as in when it's foregrounded to the user, it makes a call to the server. And am I still alive? Am I still able to do this? Is the device ID that you have in your Firestore database the same as my current one? If not, log out. But that puts the onus on the client, not on the server, which depending on your use case, this is about security, not just about user UX, right? Not about user experience, but it's about security. You probably want to move it to the server side. But there's a few different ways of achieving that. And basically the premise is you're keeping some reference about the unique device so that if they try and log in elsewhere, that new login becomes the primary and the rest of them get logged out. There's things like, as I said, like listening to Firestore, a Firestore snapshot is an active thing. So if the new login on the next tab changes it, the other tabs are going to get notified, and then they can be logged out. That's probably the simplest way.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a ton of ways of doing it, right?
Anyway,
you're muted, Scott. You're muted, Scott.
Oh, yeah,
you are muted. You are muted.
Where are we at with smartwatches? Very punny, James.
Where are we at?
Where are we at?
That rivals anything I do on this show. Oh boy, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. I'm going to use this.
Somebody did answer that one in the chat with the I think pointing to, was it VGV or somebody just had recently a blog post on wearable Flutter applications. So,
well, I mean,
but I guess it depends on what they mean by where are we. Yeah.
I mean, I've run Flutter applications. I've built Flutter applications for Android Wear.
Yeah.
So you can always do that. I mean, we spoke about this a couple at the last @sign, one of these. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had @sign on here. We were talking about embedded platform, and really the problem here is that Dart, if you want to run it on these really lightweight embedded environments, Dart has a minimum. Dart/Flutter has a minimum requirement of Linux and a Linux kernel environment, and probably more than you really want a hardware GPU acceleration as well if you're going to do the visuals. And at that point, it's like, well, it's more than just like a really low power device. So yeah, it depends on the device, but certainly Android Wear. Android devices can run Flutter apps. I've done that. I'm not sure where it sits with iOS and what they call iWatch or something.
Apple Watch.
Apple Watch, that's the one.
iWatch. That's a good name though. iWatch.
Now the Pixel Watch, we should be able to have no problem with.
You just run Android's app.
Sorry, I was busy for a moment there. The good dog is demanding my attention, so I'm going to read the next question and then take care of that.
Okay.
A follow-up here. VGV released a nice article recently that covered the same thing about Android. So there we go.
Yep.
VGV strikes again.
Yeah, so I think I just saw a video as well from somebody.
This is the Wear, just Wear. This is the. I think this is maybe talking about a year ago. Yeah, this is my last update. I think I did the last update on this package when I was working on it. But I mean, it all depends on what you actually need. To be honest, the package just really deals with a few different things around like enhancements on UI. But there's a whole set of Wear APIs that could be integrated. If people want to submit a PR, go for it. You know.
For those of you listening on your radio in your car right now, that's WEAR, not WHERE. WEAR.
I've just realized there's 7 PRs in that repo. I think I should go look at that.
Oh, wow. Nice.
All righty.
You were going to take care of the dog.
Yep. Well, real quick, will Dart.io be compiled in Flutter WASM?
Will Dart.io be compiled in Flutter WASM GC? No. Right, because Dart.io is not compiled for web. It's omitted for web. Instead, it's Dart HTML, right? So I think at least, you know what? I think the package does exist in web, but it's not fully featured, right? Like things like file system behaviors and things like that. They're just not going to work. There's no file system entity. There's a bunch of stuff around the way that Dart.io works with like placing network calls and things like that. That all goes through the Dart HTML, HTTP server thing, requesting, which basically does XML RPC requests inside your browser. So
it's very limited what you can do in a browser, and that's deliberate because you don't want your browser to be able to install code for you, for example. That would be a bad idea. Yeah.
I was having a really good conversation with someone the other day about sort of web, and something occurred to me. So I wanted to quickly cover a little bit of history because it's kind of interesting. So desktop environments and in general purpose computing have always been, any program running has full access to the system. That's how it's always been, right? Like your process is there amongst all the rest of the programs that are running, and they're all running in the same container, shall we say, right? And then when Android came along and these mobile operating systems, suddenly there was this idea of a process or a program is sandboxed by the operating system. So all the stuff that's happening is sandboxed. And then in web, we also saw, in fact, this was before this, I think, but on web, we started seeing tabs. So originally, and I'm gonna rack the guests' minds here, but you remember when you used to have a browser and you go to a website that has some bad JavaScript and it would crash your browser and it would take all of your browser down, right?
Yeah.
Then some smart Alec, I think it was at Mozilla. I can't remember if it was Mozilla or Google that did this first, but then each tab had its own process. Now, on computing terms, that means its own memory space. It meant that if a process crashed, it would take the tab down only, And then you would have one process that managed all the tabs and the windows and everything. So it meant that if something went really, really bad in terms of like the V8 or the JavaScript engine or whatever it is, totally went crazy, or even like tried to get exploited or just basically fell over, it would not crash the entire thing. So the sandboxing is quite an important part of what we do now. And now Windows Store apps are sandboxed in the new Universal something or other. I can't remember what it's called now. There's a new subset of the API. So not all the Windows APIs are available to apps that are in Windows Store. And this is kind of like, I don't know about the iOS marketplace, but I'm sure that's the same sort of thing in App Store, that they're because you now have sandboxing, now sandbox network activity and file access as well in apps in Mac. So I think like taking it, I can't remember where I was going on this one, but the point here is that was it, the browser, limited browser environment, you're limited on for the purpose, right? That now that's a sandbox environment on your tab. You can be guaranteed of certain, like you can go to any website. You should not be afraid of going to a website and it infecting your computer with malware, right? Effectively, like there's Google Chrome pay a lot of money for 0-day vulnerabilities and various things in their software because they want to protect against this, right? But the point is, generally speaking, it's a sandbox environment. So with that in mind, applications and webs, the web has now become an application. The web browser is now an application hosting server. Each tab is essentially an application that's been downloaded, that was written in JavaScript, that's now compiled and running on the client side. And it literally, each website now just calls out to the APIs, the same APIs the mobile apps would use. That's literally how most like websites now work. Now, when it comes to WASM, that's even better because you take off the interpreted nature of JavaScript and all that kind of, there's quite a lot that goes into just reading the text that is JavaScript and processing it into the opcodes to be run. So WASM takes that kind of, there's a lot more to this, but it takes away that kind of top level. So now WASM, that's the reason why if you go look at what they call there's DOSBox running in your browser, you can literally run DOS, the old operating system that all computers ran on, in your browser and play DOS games in your browser on Internet Archive. And it's like, there's no way you'd be doing that even with these most more powerful computers with those kind of levels, right? You can now run, like, I think I've seen someone running a full PC emulator in a browser with WASM, right? So
I think they even had to slow it down because otherwise it was running too fast. They actually had to put timing loops in it because it runs so fast in JavaScript in your browser today that it runs faster than the native architecture back when it was first created.
I mean that's the same. I mean you got to imagine that you could run. I wonder if anyone's done a calculation of how many ZX Spectrums you could run on a modern PC in emulation before it explodes. I mean you could run. Surely you could run thousands of them at least, maybe tens of thousands.
Hard to tell.
It's crazy. Each one was like, was it 1 megahertz? I think the original ones, right? And then WASM GC, if anyone doesn't know, is WASM garbage collection. It's the standard that is really going to. So briefly, just going to mention what this is, just to clarify a few points. People don't know. Whenever you need to use something on your whenever you need to use a variable in your Flutter application, like a string or an integer or an object, it has to be allocated from memory. That memory has to come from something that's the RAM you have in your computer. Now, in all software, it's always been you have to ask the operating system, can I have this amount of memory? And you give it a size. So if you have a string that's 10 characters long, you go, give me, well, it's 11 because you null terminate. But anyway, you say, give me this, give me these. And you don't want to forget those. Give me, 11 bytes, and then it would allocate you a bit of memory of 11 bytes. And if you try and go out of that memory, it might crash, it might do other things. And this is the nature of unmanaged applications, unmanaged memory. And you have managed memory, which is where garbage collection comes in, which is where you ask your framework or library to go allocate the memory, and it will manage those allocations. And what will happen is when you stop using that variable, it magically gets garbage collected, which is what happens is that every so often the framework will or library will look at the memory and go, okay, none of these have references anymore, and then it'll free them up. It'll go into a free list, and that memory can be reused. So taking a step back here, the interesting point here about WASM, WASM GC is the fact that WASM essentially uses that slab memory, it uses malloc and free, kind of, you have to manage that memory allocation. With the GC side, it means that you can take advantage of the platform garbage collection, like the stuff that's inbuilt into the operating system, that much more. And taking that kind of step means that we get better memory management of faster memory allocations. And it's the kind of thing you really need for really hardcore programs. It's not like something not like Hello World or something simple or anything like that. When you're talking about rendering graphics and processing on every frame, you need garbage. You need that kind of You can't use slab allocations for that. You manage the memory yourself. You're shipping an allocator and a garbage collector in every web page. It's like no. Anyway, sorry.
Cool. No, that's good. Good long answer. It's fascinating to see how the technology of garbage collection has progressed over the decades. And in the old days, it used to have to like shut everything down, and you went and looked for all the things that weren't referenced.
Oh, I remember fighting Android. Many days of fighting Android on that.
First time I tried to learn coding was 1994.
Yeah. So,
okay, and I'm sitting there trying to learn C++ from books with no help.
Yeah, yeah. So we progressed so far beyond that we have basically background garbage collectors now that can basically run in parallel. So if you the way I understand it, and I could be wrong, and somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong, obviously, if I am, but the main isolate actually has a second thread that's running to handle some IO stuff, but also to handle the garbage collection. It's actually a separate thread. So it's running in parallel on a separate core, perhaps, from your main calculations that you're doing on your IO thread. So it can be running in parallel. Amazing that it can go through and figure out who's not pointing anything right now, even though it's doing it sort of dynamically. It's really cool stuff.
Multi-threading and all of that can be an interesting.
Oh,
yep.
Don't go down the route. That's all I'm going to say. Go on, Scott.
So, speaking of graphics and such, James had an interesting point, and Simon, I think this one will be near and dear to your heart.
Before we jump onto another question, I think that someone's joined us.
That's not a question; it's a comment.
Danielle, welcome.
Danielle,
hi. Sorry about that. I was at a dentist appointment, so I was having more fun than being here, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you have the laughing gas? Are we gonna?
I did not have the laughing gas, but I might have 2 cavities. So that's, like I said, lots more fun.
Wow.
Never ends.
Right.
But I'm here now.
Flutter and VR. Who would have
they're
thought?
doing some great things in VR and things like autism. I won't bring that up again. VR, that is. So I may have been playing around with VR in Flutter. There you go.
Cool.
You been playing anything yet?
I'm
look for a talk on that in several months.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we have Danielle introduce herself?
Yes, Danielle. Sorry, we keep doing that, don't we?
Everybody knows Danielle.
I'm hoping that I'm here enough that I don't necessarily have to. But,
you don't need to introduce yourself. All right. Go on.
I'm Danielle. I'm a Flutter developer in Florida in the United States, and I'm also one of the co-organizers of the Flutteristas. And so that's kind of me right now. I lead a team of Flutter developers. And we work on Flutter Web. And
Florida still is in the U.S.
It is, yes.
Just checking. Okay, all right. We didn't ship it off somewhere.
Yeah, down in the bottom right.
Still attached. Yes. Yep. All right. Good.
Unless you go to Key West. You go to Key West. That's not actually really attached, but
Okay. Yeah.
Since we're having a little break.
All right.
Since we're having a little break here before we jump on something else, I do want to mention that we do have a call for papers open right now.
There we go.
Dev, since someone mentioned this, where I will be doing a talk as well as lots of other people. So you can right now go to this website, submit your talks, as well as get your tickets. So if you want tickets, go to the website, grab them now while you can before we sell out. So there's still a lot of time, so don't worry, don't have to rush it. But you know,
now here's an interesting thing. Okay, I'm going to be there, and the talk that I'm doing is kind of related. Can a stateless or stateful widget return a list of widgets, such as a column or row, but I don't want the layout of the flex widget? Well, you can return a list of widgets in a list. I mean, that's what's in there, but that when you return it, you're going to have a list in Dart code. It's just going to be a list. The question is, what do you want to do with it after you have the list?
So
Now, I mean, if they can they build a column without using a flex widget? I mean, the answer is yes.
No way.
But you'd have to
because a flex in a row. I'm sorry, a column in a row are the superclass is a flex.
No, I understand. You'd be implementing yourself. Basically, whatever flex does, you'd have to be doing. You know, I'm just saying.
You just have a render object.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like can you create a car class without a vehicle, without using the vehicle class? And it's like, not really.
Well,
but it sounds like if you want to return a list of widgets, well, yeah. I mean,
where are you using it?
Why?
It's got to go somewhere. It's got to go somewhere that has a child. Yeah.
Well, I'm more kind of curious about what is the problem with using a column or a row.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
That's really what we need to understand. Why don't you
all
want
of the headaches?
Well, the point here is if you've got a series, if you're just returning back a list of items, and you want them to, I don't know, fit into whatever the outside is, you can do that, like with a row column. I know the problem he's falling into because I felt like I needed that same thing specifically with slivers. So when you're trying to compose something in slivers, you want to return back embed a sliver with a list of slivers inside. That is impossible. There's no sliver column right now. There's no such thing. It doesn't work. So I think I don't know.
You could just turn a sliver list that's not scrolling into something like a column. But why would you?
It's not recycling. That's the point, right? You want each element to be recycling. So you could obviously just return a sliver to box adapter with a column inside it with all your items. I mean, but then they're all getting instantiated at the same time and created, right? Anyway, so tell us more.
I was going to say the spread operator might come into play somewhere.
So a lot of the time, like if the problem I think I know what he's come up with is that you want to return back a list of items, yet you still want to have that list of items be related to some sort of state, maybe. So it's like, you can make a function that returns a list, just a list, and then you can use the spread operator to embed that in your host widget in its row or column, right? You can do that, but you don't get the cacheability of that. You're essentially just making this function as part of the parent. So when you start composing lots of these large widgets together, especially large long columns and so on, you really want those elements to be independently cacheable when you can.
I've seen this question come up in different ways on chats and on Discord and stuff. And it's usually the question is something phrased like, it says child there, like for leading or trailing, for example. But I want to have 3 widgets there. How do I put 3 widgets there? That's kind of the way it usually starts in terms of questioning. I think this is similar to that question, which is I have a place where I can only put 1 widget. How do I put 3 widgets there? And the answer is yes. Make it a column, make it a row, everything. There are ways to do this, but you have to end up with some adapter in the middle that turns all your widgets that you want to put there into 1 widget somehow, 1 super widget that covers it all.
And
also, if they don't want it in a straight column or in a straight row, Ben came up with a good point. You can use a stack. And then with positions, you can just move them wherever you want.
Or Boxy. Boxy's the universal solution.
Go on, Danielle.
Yeah, I was going to say, just say on that. The problem with a stack, though, is then you have to know the size of it to know where to put it.
Yeah.
So that I was thinking stack too because children would kind of work. But what I was going to say is is like going to Randall's example there. The one thing that you need to be aware of, because one thing you might run into is like if you're putting a row in to put 3 icons where it's got a trailing where it's expecting one widget, you put a row in there. Depending on what's going on there, that could cause it to go too wide. In which case, your secret there would be like main axis size min, or something like that. Because that could be a problem of why it's failing with that.
I'm going to say another thing that people forget to use or don't know that they can use is intrinsic width and intrinsic height. These 2 widgets solve a lot of your layout problems. And it could be that you can't put a column in there with either min, max, or whatever to solve your kind of thing. There's actually a common practice that people don't understand that you can do. I'm going to just actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to quickly bring this up on the stream. Hang on.
While you're bringing that up, Simon, I just want to point out the fact that I talked about intrinsic height on when I was on the boring show 3 years ago at IO19, and it's because that's the first widget that Simon taught me. I had a problem. I solved that, and that was 3 years ago.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it that long ago?
Also,
literally is.
Still going strong.
Wow, John, your mic changed.
We said it. We must have said something that set Simon off in live coding mode.
No, I just want to show this, right? So
Okay.
if you've got, let's say you've got a row, right, and children, whatever, right? It's totally just So I've got 2 buttons. I say button. Let's just call it a button, right? And we'll call this text left, one of right. Okay, so this might be a common thing. Now, the problem with this is left and right, the words, one is shorter than the other, right? So if I said this is right next, I don't know, whatever, right? Now, these are totally
Right
different
on.
size words. So what's going to happen is, okay, right on, sure. Right on. So
Born in the 60s.
the fact is,
60s nothing. That was the teens. It came around again.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Come on, back on track, people. So the point here is that the left and the right. Who's playing with their mic?
Yeah, let me mute. I'll mute it.
Yeah. The left and right are different lengths, which means the 2 buttons are different sizes, but you want them to be the same width. This is intrinsically really hard to kind of get your head around when you're starting with Flutter, and it's super simple once you understand. So first of all, row will split its size against the ones that are remaining as that have flex values. So what we do is we give this one an embedded expanded, sorry, and we can actually do the same thing for the second one. But
Doing this in Notepad is just making me laugh.
Oh, hang on a minute. There you go. You want some Dart syntax? There you go. Some Dart syntax. Anyway.
Oh, man.
It looks so much better now.
It's like using Vim. Sorry. It's just.
Do we get any highlighting if I do this? Probably not.
Real coders use Vim.
Real coders use Vim. Exactly right. Anyway, so this is the kind of thing you might do. But again, now they do consume both sizes, but now the row is going to try and push itself out for the space because by default it's max width. Max. So what you're saying is, give me I'm trying to wrap it. I can't do it because I don't have the hotkeys. But basically, you wrap this in intrinsic height. I think I spelled that right. I have no idea. Width. Yeah, I meant width.
And this was the exact problem we solved 3 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's quite common, but people still don't get it. So intrinsic width, and what this does is it asks for the width that all of these things would be conjoined together, and then tries to lay it out with that width. And what's going to happen is these 2 things are opposed to each other, so these get handed the exact size of the biggest one, essentially. And this means that both the buttons end up being exactly the same width. And you can actually put a gap in between, so you can have like const size box width I don't know, 20 or whatever, right? And yes, they're still going to be the same width because expanded is about equal sizes because they have the same flex value.
Wow.
So that's kind of a common like use case that you see that people still don't get.
Follow-up question. Would that still work if it wasn't expanded and just the buttons?
No, because they'll be different sizes. The expand is is what forces them to be larger or equal size, basically.
But in that example, that example needed to be a column, not a row, right?
Well, I put it as a row and put width, right? So it's across.
Yeah, but
you could do it with a column as well.
Yeah, but, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, what did I miss that? Sorry, didn't you?
No, I was thinking make them the same width. You'd want it to be a column, and that would make them the same width, right? Because
I agree. I think she's on something there. I think the fact is you're measuring the wrong thing in the wrong dimension here.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going. They're next to each other. Two expanding next to each other with intrinsic width around them. Because I'm going.
It should have been in an editor so that we could have put it up on Flutter and check it out.
But anyway, the other thing I said, there is intrinsic height that you can also use that with. And another thing to mention is that, again, most people don't use cross-axis stretch on rows or columns enough.
Right.
Every column should literally, the default for column should be cross-axis alignment stretch.
Yeah, but then people would get upset because their texts are no longer centered.
Good. So right. To be honest, most text should actually have. The problem is most text should actually have text aligned center if it's centered, and that's another thing people don't do. They center the widget, but they don't center the text. So if the widget, if the user puts their text font size up to like maximum, it gets bigger. It wraps left aligned, but in the center of the screen, which is like what?
UI problems
don't center the widget to center the text.
Yeah.
And back to one other point Danielle was talking about. I'm sorry, Danielle, you were talking about needing to know the size of a stack in order to use a position because positioned is in units, is in dips. That's one of the reasons that it drives me crazy, and I use aligned instead of positioned. I just use aligned with an XY.
Yeah, right. But once again, that's nowhere near what a column would be, though, because once again,
no, true.
Yeah, if you don't know, and even then with an align, a smaller screen is going to be laid out totally different than a larger screen. So yes, I absolutely support Sarah as a way to help move stuff around without having to worry about that. So like if you want one at the top and one in the middle and one at the bottom, align's your friend all day long. But be aware that if it's somehow small enough, they're going to overlap. There's nothing to stop that.
Yep. There's also a quick little follow-up here from Michael. Good question. Why stretch and not start?
They're different, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you want things to especially on mobile phones to fill the width, right? Once on a column, for example, you want it to fill the width, and then you want to center specific items. Very rarely do you want a column that has all its elements centered.
Right.
That's a horrible UX use case.
Yeah.
And never do you actually want to see it. You kind of want it stretched with padding and other things to kind of align things correctly. You never really want center.
Yeah.
And
so
start
and end and center all behave exactly the way you would expect them to behave. Stretch, though, is the oddball because stretch says everybody's the same width. Force everybody to be the same width.
And I will mention that people don't understand why it's called start and end. And that's because on left to right or right to left text, it will actually flip them around. So start is on the left for left to right readers. That's left to right.
That's what I was going to point out in my talks. I go over that as well. Is when you say start, it's going to look at the language that is set, and if the language reads left to right, then starts on the left, which is great for English, French, Spanish, German. But if your user is reading in Arabic, it's going to flip it.
Mm-hmm. But then we still have some things where you're still referencing the sides, which is kind of weird. They I'm trying to think of a good example.
And Simon said center was the oddball, but don't ever look at baseline. That will drive you absolutely insane.
That can be fun.
Baseline can make you nuts.
Now, one other thing I thought was very interesting was I'm teaching a boot camp at my alma mater, Oklahoma University. And so we were in there, and we'd done something with cross-axis stretch on a column, and we had a text. And so now all of a sudden the text is all the way to the left. I'm sorry, it was a row. We had a row in there with it, but now but as soon as we did stretch, it moved everything to the left, or the text in the row moved. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the exact example. Whatever, it's not really that important of what was going on. And so I'd say, well, how would you center the text? Thinking that in the text object you would align it center. And they said, wrap it with a center widget. And I said, sure, let's try it. So we wrapped it with a center widget, the row with a center widget. And what that ended up actually doing, though, was making it to where it shrunk the size of the row to a min size. And so it centered it anyway. So it actually worked for the way it was going. I thought that was very interesting because I didn't expect it to work. I was expecting, this would be an example where I'm showing them something that failed. And it worked.
That's interesting because that would indicate that the stretch was forcing tight constraints and that the align broke them.
Well, no, the center was the tight constraints. The center was the whole width.
The problem there was probably that the outside bounds were unconstrained.
Yeah.
So no constraints were being passed down.
Yeah.
Just to mention that, now that people don't realize that there was actually an unconstrained box widget. I think that might have mentioned actually just recently on a Flutter tweet. But unconstrained is actually really helpful if you want to center in one axis alone. So the center widget centers in both horizontal and vertical. If you only need to center in one axis, it's an unconstrained box, if I remember rightly, and it has an alignment, and you tell it what axis you want to constrain to. So you're basically saying align to this constraint, but keep the constraint on the X or on the Y, and it solves that problem. So if you've got something that's like you need to shrink but keep it centered in the alternative axis, you can do that easily and not have it push out, which is what would happen with a center widget.
Very cool. All right.
Yep.
I'm going to have to get going here in a little while, but I can do a few more. I think, Simon, you're looking to code as well, aren't you? Maybe?
Maybe.
Okay. Who knows? Let's see here. Can we get the Flutter code from Figma UI? I think you're talking about what was that Figma to Flutter?
Well, Supernova has a way to get like your like kind of create some of the elements. So it'll create like your type styles, your text styles. It'll create your colors and stuff like that, and it can automatically export that to Flutter. So that's I guess one thing I would throw out there. And the second thing I'm going to say is almost anytime you're doing something like that, it starts putting hard-coded like sizes and things like that in there, which is not really the best experience. So
you lose your responsiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, to be honest, the problem here is UI is never. We've seen this before. It's like, I think all of us on the call have probably experienced this, which is like make the UI exactly as the designer has it, right? The designer has designed one picture of the layout on one screen size. Now, it's great if you've got a designer and they do multiple ones that show how the breakpoint should be, great, but it's still fixed images. It's not reactive to all the possible scenarios of font size and everything. That's why you build it. So at the end of the day is a lot of the time you have to build it, and then you have to make your own. So this is what you said, like Figma, you're designing it, but when you build it, when you write in code, you actually have to make it reactive. You have to make it extend to lots of different circumstances that are not in the design. So there's not like design and build it. It's not going to make that jump for you. The best thing you can do is to learn the layout system. And actually saying that, I know I mentioned this last week, but I'm going to put a link in because it's great. There is a understanding constraints.
That's got marks. Oh no!
This is it. This is it. Constraints go down, sizes go up, parent sets position. This is the go-to guide if you want to understand the layout system on Flutter. It has lots of examples and tons of really good examples of how these different widgets work. So I'll pop that in the chat so people can go find it. But yeah, learn the layout. Honestly, once you get used to it, it can be really infuriating when you get these like unbounded constraints and rows and columns and goodness knows whatever else. But once you get there, it's straightforward.
Right.
Yep.
As soon as somebody asks me how much padding, how many pixels should I put between these two widgets, I go, you've lost. You've lost the game when you say, whenever you start counting pixels, you've lost the game.
And the thing is, too, it's like you have one aspect ratio here, but if you go to one of the Samsungs, they can be even narrower and longer. And then an iPhone's a different aspect ratio, as opposed to an iPad, as opposed to a
foldable.
Samsung A7.
Yeah, I left my
know.
phone in the other room, so it wouldn't out me this time
That
with
foldable.
noise. I was going to show the folding.
But yeah, I mean, you make it right on one, great.
Well, and I got a minor disagreement with you, Randall, because like for example, if I'm laying out stuff in a column, I think it's quite legit to want to put a certain amount of space between each of the items.
Now, let me be clear: dips, not pixels. That's the reference.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, of course, yeah.
No, but Randall was saying pixels, right? It's like you don't count the pixels themselves; you're counting.
Well, hang on, because they're density independent pixels.
So I know, I agree with that. That's yeah. It's a great point to say.
Or actually, as they say, logical pixels.
Yeah, 1 pixel in Flutter is not 1 pixel on your device, and you should never be caring about actual pixels on your device. I have that argument actually with my designers all the time. I keep saying, I mean, because what they're suggesting is if I cared about the actual pixel density at all, then you're saying if I've got like a 5-year-old iPad and a new iPad, they're exactly the same size, you're wanting me to show them the screens differently. And the answer is no, not at all. I think they should be the same.
Mm-hmm. They should look the same.
So yeah, I'll give a good example of this is that touch size that we're talking about earlier, the minimum touch size for material. Mm-hmm. That is based on like standard thumb. I think it's called originally was called like the thumb size, if I remember rightly. And the idea is that when you touch something with your thumb, you should be able to press it, right? Well, just because I got a smaller screen doesn't make my thumb any smaller or any bigger, right? Like you should expect the touch size to remain the same on those two screens.
Well, and even it's not so much screen size, but the density of the pixels.
Well, that's it, but also screen size. Like it doesn't matter if the screen size changes, right? You expect it to remain the same touch size. The same goes for it doesn't matter the number of pixels on the screen. It should be the same touch size. Generally speaking, they are just about the same. I just want to be clear that Android buckets, so you have 160, 240, 3 something, 480. There's a bunch of like different buckets that of pixels per inch that it falls into. So they're not always going to be exactly the same, but they're ratioed the same. So that's the key point here.
I remember when I was buying my phone previous to this one, I was doing Android Daydream. So I went hunting the most dense pixels I could. And I think that was 585 or something with the Samsung S9. Something like that. But anyhow, all right. Next one. Okay, this is a legitimate question. I will not make fun of JavaScript, I promise. How can we use JavaScript window.addEventListener in web for Flutter? I have K as web, but cannot remove the warning from the import Dart HTML library. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get rid of the warning. This is similar to what we did with the video repo, isn't it, Simon?
I'm gonna tell you exactly what the problem here. How can I use? Yeah, so you can't get rid of the warning. No, the warning is just it's a mistake. What you can do is you can ignore the warning on your file, or in like a separate package and put those things in a separate package. There's a few different ways of that. But the warning is just that it's a warning. You can just completely continue using it. I think the lint check should probably look at K as web, but that is a Flutter, not a Dart thing, and Dart HTML is a Dart thing. So it gets complicated. Probably there was a way of doing it. You could a lint for this, but yeah, it's not there yet.
Yeah, and you can put something at the top of your the file that says to ignore that linter rule, and then that way it'll get rid of the annoying warning that's in your face.
Before we jump onto another question here, I just wanted to bring up something on the stream. I just dug it out. This is bring side by side. This is the supporting different screen sizes guide on by Android. I'll pop this link in the chat. These are kind of like typical different screen sizes. So you can say this dip is the same logical pixels number that we have. So if the smallest width is greater than 600, then you're on a 7-inch tablet. You can make that supposition, and this is where it's sort of like the chart kind of works out where your different breakpoints are. So there's a bunch of stuff around density, how you handle multiple screen sizes. There's a lot of documentation about making your layouts responsive. You don't have to look at Flutter specific documentation. It's all this logic and behavior still applies. It's just the actual code and the examples is going to be different, right? So this is not going to work, but the actual thought processes and the text and the information they are providing is completely accurate, right? So you can see here like device representation. So anyway, so check it out, and there's a lot more information on the developer documentation on Android. Go read.
Okay, this next one, I'm wondering if you already got your answer. How can we upgrade all packages in Melos?
I think Randall answered it.
Didn't that get answered in chat?
Yeah, Randall answered it.
You can run any command and everything that has a pub spec by saying Melos, I think it's exec, Melos exec in a command line. So everything that has a package in your mega package, your unit package, whatever it's called, monorepo. There we
Monorepo.
go. Everything that's in your monorepo that has a pub spec, if you say Melos exec that command, then it'll run that command in all of the subdirectories. Typically, though, what you'll want to do is create a run script for that so that you can say Melos run update or Melos run generate, things like that, to run the same operation across your subprojects.
In this use case, what you're saying would be Melos exec Flutter Melos exec Flutter pub upgrade, and it runs Flutter pub upgrade on every package in Melos YAML.
Yes.
Now I can't remember who's behind Melos. I'm trying to remember that one.
VGB.
Invitace. Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't positive. So I'm actually waiting for Invitace to come out with an update for this that is like Melos run for pizza.
They actually
it would
just
be
released Melos 3. Just to everyone know, Melos 3. Oh, it's some really cool improvements. So check it out.
And Invitace has been doing a lot of great work. They really
Invitace are a tooling company. They really like doing tools and frameworks and libraries and everything like that. And so in that area, they win. They're really good.
Yep.
Remy, who works there, has been going crazy with custom lints and just doing some amazing stuff, especially with the RiverPod custom lints that allow you to do quick fixes to turn your stateful widget into a consumer stateful widget with one click. That is just awesome stuff. And it's because he built this really cool package called Custom Lint that lets you create your own lints. Like you could enforce, for example, a house style on what parameters you need for certain kinds of functions by having a lint for it. That's a house lint. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Also, Melos has someone, I'm sorry, not Melos, Invitace. has a GDE working for them, a Flutter GDE by the name of Mace. Mace is in Saudi Arabia.
And she's
also one of the Flutteristas. Yep. There we go. Danielle beat me to it.
I'm
all right.
Just...
There you go. The ladies are definitely getting a lot of it done. So let's see here. Why is it that controllers and stuff like that need to be initiated and disposed in their parent widgets? Now, they need to be initiated and disposed in the state object. But if you're asking why they need to be initiated and disposed, well, for one, they need to be started. The other one, if you don't dispose of it, it sits there in memory forever and ever. And if the user keeps going back to that screen over and over again, or worse, if you have a bunch of these different animation controllers in a whole bunch of different widgets that are moving all over the screen because you made a game and you don't dispose of any of them, that's called a memory leak.
I'll give a good example of where this is really a practical, and why most controllers do this, and that is, I'll give an example, scroll controller. So you probably want things listening to the scroll, where the scroll is and how the scroll is doing that, doing what it's doing. So, for example, the scroll bar widget listens to the scroll controller to know where to draw the scroll bar on the side of the screen. Now, when you dispose of your widget, if you don't get rid of that don't dispose of that scroll controller, it still registers the scroll events to the scroll bar. So when I click on the scroll bar, I'm still going to try and scroll that scroll controller, which because it's not attached throws an error. So the idea is you're cleaning up after yourself. So things that last longer than the life cycle of your widgets on the screen are things that you probably want to have some control over. And they don't have to be the correct parent. It's just it's wherever you want. You can create them anywhere as long as you're managing the state.
It's typically when you have a two-way binding with one object and another, where one object needs to know about the other object to, for example, something watching the scroll move is an object that's watching the scroll, so it needs to know about the scroll. But the scroll then needs to know about the object to be able to notify it at the right time. So it sets up its own data structure that's holding all these other objects. And it needs to be told, no, get rid of that now, because we're not out here anymore. We don't need to be listening to this anymore. So it's anytime you have this circular binding where one thing knows about the other, but the other has to know about the first as well to be able to be functional. And that's usually the time you'll see stuff in dispose to manage that.
And we're talking about scroll controllers, but I think text controller is probably a more obvious example, just because whenever someone hits a key, or whenever someone hits a key, that text controller is going to change. And so if it's got listeners, it'll call those listeners. And like Simon was saying, if it calls a listener for a widget that's no longer around, that's a problem. So that's actually not. That's not cleaning up the controller. That's clean. Although if you dispose your controller, it will get rid of all those. But that's also making sure that if you've added a listener, that you remove the listener. If it's appropriate. Once again, dispose will remove the listeners. But I mean, depending on what's going on. And then the other thing I would say with the
garbage. We're talking about garbage collection. Yeah. Garbage talk. I like that.
The other thing that's kind of an interesting paradigm to kind of get used to is sometimes you may want to pass a controller in to your widget, and if you do that, that can lead to other issues. Like, for example, if you have to have a controller no matter what, that means that now in your init state, you're going to be setting it equal to whatever was, widget.controller, question mark, text editing controller or whatever. And so if you do something like that, though, you've got to be now you've got to add, the update widget call. Was it did update widget?
Yeah.
And so you have to add that call in then, so that you can, so that you're able to, check and see that do I need to free this one up or not. Those are some neat paradigms that come in there with the controllers, and that's also all kind of related to why you have to manage it on your own, because there's different flavors of what's happening.
And I do want to say that in the last couple of years, Dart has changed by adding 2 new user-facing features that will make some of that a bit easier for future designs, or maybe parallel designs to the ones we have, which is finalizers, which means you can run code on your way out. When the GC finally takes you dead, it can also run some code for you. Yeah, deconstructors, destroyers, virtual destroyers. The other is true weak references, so that you can say, if I'm the only one holding this other object, I don't matter. Go ahead and let it die. And so between the two of those, you can build up much more complex structures that wouldn't need this sort of dispose stuff that we're all explicitly doing. But that's a different design from scratch. So we can't wedge it into the existing design. The existing design, if it says dispose it, you better dispose it. You better do it, because that's the way.
I think me and Remy were chatting about this a long time ago. I still want an disposable like annotation that lints can kind of hook onto. So he goes, you didn't dispose of this. You should dispose of this. I don't know any reason why we don't have an disposable like annotation. Annotation is nothing. It's just an object, right? Attach the object to the disposable things. Super like, and lints can pick that up and go, no, you need to dispose of this object. It also means that, potentially in the future there, we can actually maybe hook something up with like an auto dispose kind of mechanism. I mean, that's kind of where hooks come into it, like very much like Remy's hooks. What's it called? Flutter hooks, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Flutter hooks.
But yeah, I mean, that has its own implications. And for me personally, I don't like the idea of generating objects and not seeing its life cycle. For me, I need the life cycle of hooks is very much hidden from the developer. It's kind of implicit. and I like to see it. Me personally, I like to see it explicitly at least. So,
well, once you realize it has to be exactly tied to the life cycle of the state widget, or the effectively the state object of the widget it's being used in, that it's tied to exactly the same cycles.
It's tied to the state object it's being created in. Like I said, you may be
Yes, I'm saying.
Yeah, but like if I pass into a widget a controller, that's the one that's it. I mean, it's the controller could be for example, right. A text field uses the controller, but it's not the one that's responsible for getting rid of it.
Right.
There's also, like, as you said, I mean, the one with the text editing controller is a good example of that, where basically in fact, text field does this, right? So that is, you pass it. If you pass in a text controller, it uses that. Otherwise, it creates its own, because it always has to have one. However, the problem now is that you better make sure you have the correct ownership over the right one, because you don't want to free the one that you've been given, and you don't want to destroy the one that you've been given, dispose of it. So
I
make sure that you get rid of the one that you've made. So it gets complicated.
At least it's a lot better than C. It's a lot better than C, where, boy, I tell you, if you freeze something that you didn't malloc yourself, often never land memory.
Dude, I remember bugs that literally were only around. No, I've got to do this with double free bit issues, where basically you
freeze. Yeah,
the memory gets reallocated, and there's some other thing. You freeze some other thing, and it just the whole thing, and they're like impossible to
there
find.
There was a day.
Back in my day,
we double freed something, and you were offering some unknown state.
You can talk. Go on.
You all are talking like C is really old. This is when I want to bring up the joke about the frozen COBOL programmer.
Yeah.
Dude, COBOL's still being used.
It is. That's the terrifying.
You can make some good money if you know COBOL. Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously.
Hang on. Like the one thing you have to say about like COBOL or any of those kind of things like Fortran or whatever, right? Is they're so low level, what's the word? They're so low level and so like what's the word?
Basic.
Limited. Hang on purpose. It means that whatever you build in there, you can actually work out what the entire behavior of the system is, and it's very much like functional programming in terms of you can see the entire functioning of the thing, right? Whereas when it comes to like all these abstractions and high level languages, it's just the potential of issues is just inflates so considerably. You can see how.
But we're so spoiled. There's so much being taken care of for us.
I did appreciate the announcement in the mid-90s. I remember hearing that they finally came out with object-oriented COBOL. It's called Add 1 to COBOL.
Oh, okay.
And now, for those who don't understand why we're saying this,
the joke is because in COBOL, if you wanted to add 1 to a number, you would actually type add 1.
So it's like C++, but if you have to explain the joke, it's boring. Yes.
So for those who don't understand why the big thing about COBOL, a lot of parts of local governments in the U.S. used COBOL. And to give you an idea, the state of New Jersey used their driver's licensing system and their identification system, and they used COBOL years ago. Well, they wanted to upgrade this to something more modern, and they contacted IBM. So IBM goes in there, and they're paid a lot of money. They're there for 6 or 9 months or something. They gave the government their money back and said it can't be done because the problem was it's not type safe and there was no validation. So people were putting phone numbers in the notes field and addresses in the phone number field, and the workers were just putting anything anywhere they wanted. So the only way to update this system to something newer is for a human to go through every single record.
But now we have AI.
And now, we have millions of these records, right? So now ChatGPT to the rescue.
Well, I mean,
I'll see it done. I want to see it done.
But again, it's incorrect. You have to look through every record because every record that actually matches, you're fine with. So if you got a way to tell that a record's good, that would eliminate the majority of them that were okay. and then you'd only
That's
have
assuming the majority is okay.
That's assuming the majority are okay. Yeah,
My
you run that,
non-favorite
and then
task.
it's like, okay, cool. That took care of 5%.
Yeah. My non-favorite task is taking a database that wasn't originally thought about in terms of UTF-8 and taking all the garbage that's in there, that's Latin 1 and Windows characters, and trying to figure out what the heck each string is, and then transferring that to UTF-8 somehow. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what was the Japanese way. Japanese had a very particular way of using ASCII.
Big Five. Big Five.
No, that was Chinese.
There
was a formatting system before UTF-8 was like popularized that did Japanese, and I remember fighting in the database. Oh my god, yeah.
Anyway,
more horror.
Just
more
Fox,
ways.
bro. No.
Oh well,
Fox
there's
Pro,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
We have
geezer hour
one
is
question
over.
left.
Let's go back and ask it.
We have one question left.
Yeah.
Now, this one, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question, but
I think it's reassemble.
Widget, does it have a reassemble override?
It's reassemble.
Yeah.
A reassemble.
Yeah, which is only used for hot reload in debug, and it's the only time you need it, and most time you never need it. So don't worry about it. It's just there as one of the things to put a hook into.
It won't end up in your finished code then.
Yeah, it's never called. And I think it's actually if-def'd out when it's in the production code.
What's that?
Release mode.
What's that? Reassemble. I'm not actually sure.
Reassemble.
Yeah, reassemble. So the functions in your state widgets are still there. Actually, no, it's a point, but they're probably tree shaking out. Ignore me.
Yeah.
That's what I was. Yeah, they won't make it into the release code because they're tree shaking out.
Right.
We could spend 5 minutes talking about what tree shaking is. That might fill out a little more time.
That's when you're
we're
apple picking, right?
We're at 95 minutes. Why do we have to fill out more time?
I have the live coding still to do as well.
Oh, just live then.
You have
we're
fun
there
with
at the
that.
live coding stage. Yes. Scott needs to go, but we'll still be here.
Well, I think we're doing it. I think I'm going to run too.
Okay. Well, it's just going to be the three of us then.
Just us chickens.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now this is a perfect time to use either IntelliJ's code with me, or the what's the one in VS Code
Copilot?
where you can code together?
Copilot.
Oh
no, not Copilot.
Oh,
live code. That's
live coding.
Live share.
We had a good time. Nash and Jay and I had a good time with that because we were all messing around, and it was like Jay would type something, and I would go back in and hit backspace. So he's trying to type, and it's going backwards.
Troll.
Yeah.
There's
a waste of amazing technology. Totally a waste.
Hey, comic relief, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I am out of here.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good one, and I will see you next week.
Bye.
Okay. See you, Scott. See you, Danielle. All right. So what are you going to do, Simon? We're going to review something, or no? That's not happening. Is it?
Yes.
Yep. So, I got permission of someone to review their code. So,
wow, brave person. Brave.
A couple of weeks ago, we started a dev camp here in London, Dev Camp 2023 for Flutter, and run by GGG London and Flutter London, mainly GGG London. So thank you, Sumit and Renuka. And one of their things that they came up with was to send out, as part of the dev camp, to send out requests to build projects and so on. Anyway, so one of the participants, Bahara, I butcher everyone's name, so apologies. Let me bring her code up on screen. She I can take a look. So what I'm going to do here is share my screen. I have made everything extra embiggened, so hopefully this comes through on the stream.
Not seeing anything yet. Oh, there we go. Nope, not yet.
No.
Hang on. Give me 1 second.
Not yet.
Press
that button.
There we go.
Oh, there it is.
A little bigger, maybe. A tiny bit bigger.
A little. No, and make your eyes bigger. There's actually a full screen button on your side, Randall, on the bottom right. Just so you know.
I'm looking at it in the stream view, StreamYard. No wonder. Okay, I'll look at the real thing later.
Yeah. Full screen button. I've never done this before. Called Digital Coin. We have our first experience together on a real device, and we're going to see what problems we can find and what we can solve. And maybe I don't find any. We'll find out. So let's see. Right. So whilst that's building, let's take a quick look, shall we? So okay, it's mobile app, Android, iOS. We've got Linux, Mac, Windows. So maybe they run it on those platforms as well. I'm going to tell my ID just to exclude these directories. Maybe we'll get some performance back out of the beast. Let's see. Where am I? Excluded. Oh, hello. Stella. We have a loading spinner. Okay, well.
Is that an actual drop down?
Failed host lookup. No address. So I'm assuming that that's the very first problem I'm going to have because I'm not going to be able to run it. So this may be a very short. Without a API, I'm not going to have much luck. So let me just see is this a thing? CoinGecko is a thing. And apparently I can get API keys. So let's see if we can actually get this going here.
Coding Echo. Coding Gecko? Coding Gecko.
CoinGecko.
Is it Gecko? Is it Gecko?
CoinGecko.
Yeah, CoinGecko. Yeah.
Wow. Coin. We're talking Web3 now and crypto. Huh?
Contribution, sure.
Can I leave now? I refuse to talk about Web3.
This isn't Web3.
Entirely.
No, this is just... What?
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
You're talking Bitcoin, right? You're talking.
Oh, it's coins.
Crypto.
But okay, well, our first problem here. Let's solve this very first problem. The problem is you do not want an application that just stores on the splash screen and gives you nothing. And in fact, what's happened here? Crash. So let's fix this issue. So as we can see here, when it first starts up, we had this my app. And it has. Go on.
So the CoinGecko, what it looks like is it's an API to give you current crypto prices for all the different cryptocurrencies.
Told you.
Right.
Crypto.
So it must be an API that they're using just to get the data to display it.
Yeah.
Okay. And right now, though, it is crashing.
What is the price of a unicorn today?
Okay. So it hasn't crashed. Okay, so these are different. I guess these are different coins, and then selecting a different coin will make that request. But I don't know why it would say this doesn't exist. I mean, I know why it doesn't work. Whoops, I wasn't on airplane mode. User fail.
Oh, Robert called it out too. Airplane on.
Oh no, he did. Did he?
Didn't see it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's see. So that's good. Well, first of all, we could actually do so. One of the things you can do in this situation is to actually alert the user they're not connected with connectivity package. So we could add that
Connectivity
to it.
Plus.
So let's go to pub.dev.
One of the Flutter community packages, right?
Connectivity Plus package.
Yep, Flutter community.
That's right. There you go. And we'll pop that in. Pop that in here. Now, when you add a package, you need to, especially like, a plugin more specifically, is something that has native code. And because it has native code, we actually need to make sure that we're restarting our application from scratch, because otherwise if I run this right now and then use this package, it'll work, it'll compile, but when it goes to use the platform channel, that's the bit where it communicates with the native code, it would just say no method implemented, doesn't exist, this method channel doesn't exist. And you'll be like scratching your head, like trying to work out and debug, well, why didn't it include it? And really it's just because you forgot to stop and start again. So that's what we're going to do here.
And it might need permissions and stuff too.
No, the package will should add its permissions that it needs to. I don't think we need to actually add anything additional.
Sometimes they do.
Well,
I guess this one probably isn't.
So yeah, that's
what gets me is sometimes I use a package and it uses another package and doesn't tell me to go look at the other package's installation stuff, because I have to add a permission to make my package work. Or make the first package work.
What's really annoying about that is what most of them don't realize is they don't need to ask you to manually add them. You can actually the packages can actually either have an Android manifest file. They just add a blank application tag with their permissions in, or whatever they want to add in there, and it will get merged into the final application. So they can actually pre-declare their permissions.
What is that possible?
To manually change them? Yes. It's how this works.
Why does nobody do that then? Why is everybody making me do this by hand? I don't understand.
So if I mean, like for example, here the plus plugins, we go connectivity plus and find the Android implementation. You're seeing here Android manifest. There's the permission declaration.
Oh, wow!
That makes it so much
people
easier
should do that.
if you do that.
Yeah, people should do that. They need to get docked. They need to get docked pub points for that. Minus 10 pub points for not having that.
But the thing is, it's one of those things you can't really detect. All right, so first things first. So this pretty simple application. So that's great. Allows us to easily review it. We've got apparently we've got details view. Oh, okay. I don't know what I clicked on, but I got a details view, I think. Okay. So I click on the logo. I'll click anywhere. Do I? This.
It's just showing you details.
Right. So I click on this, and then I see some stuff, but there's no indication that this is clickable at all, right? So I'd say this is. I mean, the application is pretty fine. It gives you the information about the coin. You tap on it, and I guess this is how many coins you get in the other currencies as exchange rate or something. I guess I don't know. But
those currencies are this. Yeah.
These are like the other
Canadian dollars, imaginary, the other unicorns.
Euro, GBP. No, this is
no, real money, fiat money.
Yeah.
So this is 10
cash
worth.
Yeah.
So first of all, so we could probably look at changing the theme and making that slightly better. Let's look.
I kind of like light blue on medium gray blue on dark greenish, lightish green blue.
Is there actually like? Blue. Why do I have the feeling that?
It's so legible.
Probably. Well, this is the thing. I think the colors have been picked inside here,
like hard coded.
Yeah. Let's look
white on light blue.
If you ever see like weird indentations, it's probably because you're missing commas. Adding commas, you get lovely indentation like this. So
there's a lint for that now. It says require comma, and it will automatically add all the commas you need when you save. It's so cool.
Right, I've got all the files open now, so you don't have to have that open. Right.
So
okay,
keep that lint in mind. Require comma.
So first things first here, we have functions that are returning widgets. This is a no-go. We don't do this. So it's nice, but what you've done here is you've basically said when this build method runs, it runs this function and it runs all these build constructors inside. Nothing is cacheable, which means whenever this page has to build, it builds every widget.
Yep.
This is not what you want. So by stopping at a widget, let's say center has to include other widgets. It calls the center constructor and calls the column constructor and everything else. But center did not have to rebuild its tree inside, right? Basically by doing all this kind of thing, it's fine, but these should be widgets. So you've got about cards. So simply stateless about card. Pop that in there.
So So if you're migrating code and your build has gotten too long and you go, I want to move some of this outward, on your IDE, there's two choices: extract to widget or extract to method. These were likely created with extract to method, which makes it another method on the same class of the widget you're building. If you say extract to widget, it creates a whole brand new class that extends stateful or stateless widget, and that's what Simon says you should be doing instead. So do that instead. You could actually fix it by doing inline that widget and then extract as widget. That'd be kind of cool.
I'm trying to work out why is this suddenly complaining about this? Because they're not. Okay, so here's the next thing. They're declared. Okay, so here's the next problem we're going to have. Don't do this.
Media query. Oh, exciting.
So media query itself is not inherently bad.
Yeah, it is.
Anything doing media query of registers for any one of the changes, especially for resizing. But it's mainly about also the fact that you're saving these width and height values, and you're saving them. First of all, K is short for constant with a K because iOS. But so these aren't constants, these aren't globals. This is what you expect from that prefix. So this could just be height and width. I'm just going to refactor that anyway. Don't care if it breaks something right now. Now, more to the point. Yes, you've done this so you can use them further down in functions, right? And this is kind of a good example of your entire widget is now going to rebuild. Your entire screen and app is going to rebuild because this is the top level. So you kind of want to keep any reliance on these things into builders, into specific context where they're going to need to be rebuilt. Why do we actually need this anyway? So let's go down to the widget that needs them. So this is saying it wants it to be so first of all.
Fractional scaling.
Fractional
scaling of media query values.
So there's so much wrong with that. You imagine this on a larger screen. Suddenly you just blown this up. It's the same as literally just putting a scale on it, not what you want to do. It may feel right, but honestly it's not. Let it scale properly. So let's see here. So first of all, width 78%. What you can actually do, if we wrap this is if you want to do fractional sizes, it's fractionally sized box. Fractionally sized box, you give it a width factor 0.78. It's now going to be that width, and the height factor is 0.28 in this case. Right now, this is a fraction of the parent that you're in. So we need to go look about where about cards being used. I'm going to trace this up, and we're going to find out what's going to go wrong. And here's our first thing: center. So we talked about this alignment just a minute ago. With center, there's no width for it to be a fraction of. So this needs to be stretched for this to work, right? Now that's fine. We can center things a different way, but just to explain. And your default size is always max. You don't need to put that in there. Now let's go back down to the card here. Also the height is another thing. So this is saying space between, which spaced them out across the page evenly. But again, it means you've got to put a fixed height on that. So what we can do is get rid of that and instead put the expanded on the bottom bit. Again, it's about how we want to flow our layout. I'm going to leave that for now, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But right now, we'll come back to height factor. So right now that solves that one. Then we're going to put in a padding. Now margin is still a padding. It's just a padding, but it's on the outside of the container. Okay, so we're going to replace that. And as we said, vertical, you're trying to give it a certain amount of a gap. Now, if we go into and view the layout in here, so it's added these two. This is the padding that's added, this vertical height, the dark blue here. That's so it's because the space, because that's what was it called? Space between. This is to guarantee a certain amount of space. So you're kind of fighting against yourself in terms of laying out here. So what we probably want to do is just give it a fixed size. In this case, 48 sounds like a good number.
Sure.
And then here, edge and sets again, vertical and horizontal, 10%. Again, you probably don't want to do this. So our vertical, again, that's just this little edge around the outside around the outside.
0.01. I haven't seen that in a while. Just a little part of this big thing, whatever it is.
Why?
So, I just want a sliver. I want a sliver.
I want to make sure there's always at least a little space.
Yeah.
And honestly, 1 pixel. A purpose to that, but we'll leave it in there right now. And then we want I'm going to wrap this with now the panel at the bottom material. Go there in a second, but material, put our color on that.
Can I interrupt about Layout Builder just for a second about Media Query versus Layout Builder? So the other thing that's wrong with this, when we had Media Query at the top, is that Media Query is based on the entire size of the screen, but you may have like your headers, your footers, things like that. Layout Builder can tell you how much space is left. If you're going to make percentages of things, use Layout Builder if you at a minimum. Don't use Media Query for that.
Right.
Okay, so here's the next thing. Look at what we've got. So I understand how and why they put this in there in the first place was to limit the height. Limiting the height is what we actually want to do here. Right?
So, it didn't work. It didn't limit enough.
No, I mean, we haven't limited the height, right? That's the point, right? And what you're actually trying to do in this case is if you want to limit number of lines, you say, I want max number of lines 12. You're not going to cut a line in half. You're actually going to have a certain number of lines. And then you can also give it a
scroll. Put it in scroll bar.
Yeah.
Scrolling region.
Huh? Scrolling, that's another thing, right? Yeah.
So I mean, ultimately, you'd want it to be a scrollable.
Yeah.
To be able to see it all.
I don't know if I told you once, but I came up behind this construction truck, and on its bumper, it had that yellow and black striping. And I immediately thought overflow. I'm looking at a bumper. I'm looking at a bumper, and I'm thinking overflow on the. And then it took me a second to go. No. I'm not looking at Flutter.
You're ignoring your constraints.
Okay,
your bumper sticks out too far. It was great.
So we've put a single child scroll view, and that's lovely, but funny enough, it didn't work. And that's because the single child scroll view has not been given a height. It's unbounded height. That's because everything in a column is asked be as big as you need to be, and of course it overflows. So the key behind this is to wrap our about card in expanded. So that means the leftover space of this column is going to be given to the about card so we can scroll within it. And we have a failure, and that's probably because space between. Let's just get rid of that for a second. We have more failures. This is let's why is the question I want to ask right now. Let's see what's going on here. So let's get rid of anything that might be affecting this layout specifically. It could also be that, you know what it is? This is not going to be, So again, same problem here. Cross-axis line stretch. So if you put column inside a column, it's the same problem. It's not giving the constraints button down. It already has max. We don't want to space evenly, and we don't want to center. So, believe it or not, let's see if we can get there. Safe area is already happened for us, so we don't need that. Scaffold does the safe area. It should do the safe area.
No, it does not.
Does it not do it anymore?
No, I don't think so. I've never seen it do.
I think you need to put safe area inside the scaffold.
Maybe I'm thinking of the resize the bottom. Oh no, there was a padding. Hang on. I'm kind of curious. I think they delete this. I'm getting old now, look, because I remember when it did actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. We'll leave it in there. That's fine. I don't care right now. Come on, back. I'm good.
Or wrap your column in a safe area.
Yeah, there we go. Right, so it's loading. That's nice.
You get on comment the stuff you commented out, or we won't see anything.
Well, no, because we should be seeing the about information. Let me just progress through this here for a second. So we've got returning a column here, cross-axis, and the reason why it's not failing, the reason why it's failing on the height, and I could go look, by the way, in the layout, it's going to be the same layout problems that probably everyone's used to, which is, look, you can't have a size because render flex through a bounds exception, and basically what it tells you here is the constraints we were given versus what it can actually lay out as, and something blew up. And this can go on for a while because it can like one widget can cause another widget problem, can cause another widget problem. So you kind of you have to kind of be careful with this. But if we do this, and ta-da, and now
hey, and it scrolls.
So the first problem we're going to have, so let's bring those widgets back in first of all. See if that
scroll away,
breaks the layout.
Scroll away.
All the details.
Scrollmeister.
Yeah. So obviously, frames have changed their appearance, but that's fine. We'll get there in a second. We'll tidy them up in a minute. But the key is we're kind of back to this layout now. The problem I've got with the scroll view is, if you notice, well, if I turn off this, if I scroll, the overflow is inside. Look at this.
Yeah.
Right? So and the same goes for when you get to the bottom. It kind of it will glow and do this inside a box. It just doesn't look nice. So the quickest way to do this, is
scroll physics.
Is essentially wrap our scroll view around all of this. So that's the first sort of kind of starting point, should we say? Let's just call it a starting point. Okay? Now, we want padding, but we want the padding to be on the actual scroll view itself. So the scroll goes outside, but so we're gonna hard code some padding in here right now for a second. So we'll say let's do symmetrical. We're going to bring up this padding. 48 was on the outside of the box, wasn't it? Yes, that was on the outside. So we want a padding on the outside. I'm just reorganizing this layout slightly. Just bear with me. And then we want a certain amount on the inside. Let's just say 16. And then I'll get rid of that for a minute. And material, sure. Yep, inside the scroll view, yeah. And then our container. Let's just see what that looks like. I think okay, so I'm going to get rid of this on the outside, and instead I want to put that on the inside here. So let's see. So we've now got, you can see we've still got the gap between this and the content, but it's inside the scroll view. And we get to the bottom, it's there at the bottom. Now, if we wanted to break come in on the left and right edges, bring them horizontal here. Now, the question here is, if I put some number in here, let's say 72, maybe not that much, or maybe a little. And so here we've got a very similar feel to the original. However, there's now an indication in the UI that goes off the bottom of the screen, right? So I know I can scroll. It's not scrolling in place. And when I scroll, there's an obvious fact that it's scrolling. And when I get to the end, the flow, the overscroll glow goes to the outside edges. Really simple change, but believe it or not, that can actually improve the UI quite considerably.
Yeah.
Even more than this, that glow can actually be moved to the top of the screen, and I can show you how you avoid this area at the top inside your scroll. We can play around with that in a minute if someone reminds me. But I want to concentrate with the rest of the layout. So we've got very similar problems. So let's just show this. So that's what the layout looks like now. We could fractionally, so someone's probably going to ask about fractional. We removed that fraction size box and I hard coded a value. So this means if we go into, let's say, if I rotate the device around, do I have rotation turned on?
No.
I have no idea. Where is it?
On the first screen, right there. Auto rotate off. Yeah.
Oh, the cable came unplugged. No.
Uh-oh.
Actually, let's use a different cable. Sorry. Technical problems. All right, let's try that again.
Let's call the cable guy. He'll be there between 4 and 7 p.m. tomorrow.
Is his name Larry?
Yeah.
So here's it in what it looks like.
Get her done.
Already, No, maybe we want to limit the width there, right? Maybe we want to limit the width because, like, having that many words on one line is not a good idea.
Oh yeah, it should break into 2 columns. You need a layout builder. With breakpoints.
So okay, so what else can we do here? Let's have a look.
You need adaptive scroll from the new package produced by the Flutter team. Adaptive.
Oh yeah, we lost out. Let's start that back up again. Okay, let's go back to this. So the image. So this is the coin pick. Let's put our move the color into the container and remove the material agent, right? Do I even use a container? I did. Oh, I don't
really don't. No. Yeah.
There you go. But it's much better now. Because now you'll see. Now, I think material can be made const, can't it? Yeah. Oh yeah, but I can't make it const. But whatever. You could, but the material, to be clear, a material and a container are not the same thing. Right. So material is a surface that inks get rendered onto. And if you use containers everywhere with colors, you're painting on top of the material, on top of the inks. You won't see your ripple effects. You'll have problems. So to be honest, just don't use containers with colors when you don't need to. There is a slightly more material is slightly more expensive in terms of UX. In terms of screen performance. So you might have to pick and choose them, but they're definitely not really, really bulky heavy in terms of how they work. We'll go into it anyway. So in the terms of, I'm going to please Randall here. We're going to put a layout builder in. So the answer to making
you got this. You got this. All right.
So the idea here behind doing it this way is we want to make sure that this value that we put in the horizontal is half of the remainder of 75% of the width. So we can basically fill out those gaps up on the edge. So if we were saying, was it 75 or 78 or something like that? So we say constraints, not max width. We said multiplied by multiplied by the remainder of it. So let's say 25%, right, of the screen, divided by 2 would give us our padding. Am I right in thinking that, guys?
Yeah.
A lot of math.
You want a quarter of the screen to be used as padding. Split that in half.
Padding, and then half of that on each side, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I missed a comma. There you go. Fix that. Right. Save. It looks no different. But if I change this to 50%, we should get double, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
So it's definitely working. Now, what's kind of nice about this is if you wanted to, you can now control that number via breakpoints. So based on your screen dimension, you could then say, oh, I'm running on a tablet, so make it bigger, make it smaller, and you can sort of play with that number. Now we can actually do that on here. So we're just talking about when I rotate it horizontal, what we might want to do there. So there is orientation builder. There's a few different other ones. In this case, what we want to do is to rebuild the single child scroll view only when the media query changes, shall we say, right? That's what we were just talking about earlier.
The width.
So we can, so we can actually go detect the orientation and just do it on orientation. That's another thing. So that's literally the orientation. However, anyway, it doesn't matter. Right. For the moment, let's keep this.
I'm biased against orientation only because I also do a lot of stuff with desktop and web where there isn't really a well-defined vertical versus horizontal. There's just whatever you drug your window out to.
Yeah.
And you need to make it so that it works. If it's a width-related thing, it needs to work whatever the width happens to be. even if it's tall and skinny or short and fat. And the width is what matters, not whether it's vertical or horizontal. So just my little 2 cents. The little bit of DUI that I know. Yes. That's it. It's done. I told you everything I know. Layout builder. Breakpoints. There we go. That's it. You just got my entire UI knowledge.
So what we got here, phone tablet builder. We pass it builder function, which is going to receive the context and is it a phone or not, and return a widget. And then down here in our widget, we could do this with media query. We can also just do this when the size changes. For example, media query will rebuild your widget. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Media query will rebuild your widget even when the locale changes, because that's part of the media query. So if you want to be more specific and more selective, it's widgets binding observer. It's a mixin that you add. I think you might be able to extend it, but it's a mixin that you add, and then what you do is in your init state, you would say widgets binding observer add listener instance. Come on. Why you do this? Why you do this to me? Isn't it? Widgets binding observer. I'm the widgets binding dot add observer. Hang on. Let's find out. I'm that's the one. Sorry, that's what I want there. Right, and then dispose. Again, we want to dispose because we want to remove our observer. We don't want to be called. We don't want to be constantly called after a widget disappears. So now what this is going to do is you can go look up widgets binding observer, but there's several methods you can override, and one of them is did update metrics or did change metrics. That's the one. The metrics, it does talk about this on the right, but metrics is about the screen size. And then we can say in here, we can can make a choice to see if it's tablet or not. So in here we can say ball. Now I'm going to put this in its own. This is getting a bit complicated. I'm just going to move it out into its own. File. So let's call this. What's it? We're going to call it phone tablet builder. My UI has changed the font size, so things aren't actually lining up. So apologies if it's not clear, but we're just going to move this into a separate file just so we can work on it a bit better. And then we will use that in here to achieve that goal we're just talking about. Let's just rebuild this. Let's just work on this widget. So tablet builder, and the key here is we also want to pass in a child widget that we're not going to rebuild. We can make that. How about that? So what was that?
That was one of my devices making noises.
It literally sounded like it's coming from my room for a second. I was like, what? Right. So here we go. So we got these, and then what do we want to do? Yeah, we need this child. That's a good point. That's what it should be, and it's optional. Good. Right. So down here, so when we observe a change, we want to check to see has the thing that we're looking for actually changed. So we can import Dart UI show. And in this case, we only want to see the window variable, the global variable for window. And so down here, we say bool is phone if the UI window. In fact, we can actually. I'll show you how we can shortcut this. Look, check this out. This is cool. Most people don't realize you can do this, so why not? Sorry, just oops, come on, UI window. So a nice little shortcut there. So if you want to analyze the media query without actually being registered to the media query in the tree, you can do this. And then in here we can say size, shortest side, we can say width. So this is this is phone tablet, and then the phone tablet, strictly speaking, it doesn't care what orientation you're in. You just want to know, is it a phone device or a tablet device? In which case, you look at the shortest side. The shortest side of the device, so when it's in portrait, that is, right? Is it less than or equal to, I can't remember what was on that chart. I think it was 700, was it? Or 600, one of the two?
Yeah.
I think
it was
600. It might be 600. I know. Well,
tablet. I think tablet would be 7. I think tablet is 7.
So if we say it's less than 7, then it's phone, right? And then what we can do is look at our last check for phone, and we default. We could hold to begin with, and we'll call did change metrics as soon as our widget starts up to guarantee that we set the value. And then here we go and say if is phone does not equal our previously saved phone value, and we set it. So this is saved is phone, last is phone, something like that. So if it doesn't equal same, then we know it's changed, and now we know that we need to rebuild. So set the state.
Oh, you were right. It was it's 600. 600 phone and
somewhere it's in my head somewhere. So if it's less than 600, right. So what this is going to do is this is going to rebuild our widget, not the widget tree, just this widget, right? And now in our build method, we can actually call that widget builder function that we passed in, passing the context. The last time last is phone, which is our current phone thing, and then the child, which is widget.child. So the child is not being rebuilt; it's being passed into our function, and we're always going to guarantee that this is not null, because the very first time we're going to get true or false, which is not null. So it's always going to guarantee that value set. Can we call set state when the widget's starting up? I'm pretty sure we can't.
No.
So what we probably want to do is just pull this out into a function and say what get is phone. I don't know, platform phone.
Naming things
Whatever.
is hard.
Yeah, isn't it just right? So we'll just say this, and this will tell us if it's. We don't care actually if it's changed to something else. So let's return that. Saves us from having to do this multiple times. And then in did change metrics, we'll call is phone equals platform is phone. If it's different, whoops, just up. If it's different, we'll do set state, and I guess we'll just do when it starts up, we just want to set is phone in platform. So that's like a little phone sort of flip-flop phone or tablet, right? You could extend this to be a lot of things. That instead of just returning a Boolean, you can return a model. These are basically how all of those sort of breakpoint widgets work. Now, we also want orientation. So what we could also do here is add all is portrait. And again, same thing. We're just going to is last is portrait. Set up platform. Portrait. Don't really want to do this twice, and we could optimize it later, but this is good for an example. So we're going to get this now. If it's portrait, is if the size is larger than the height. So if we say aspect ratio is what, less than 1, one way. If it's the other way, it's greater than 1. Sounds about right. We'll find out if I got the right way around in a minute. Okay, and then again we'll do this twice over. And real hacky, I know, but this is portrait, portrait, and last is portrait. And we can pop that in there. And that, I think, gives us both. So now if we go back to our layout.
And just want to jump in here. If you don't want to go through all this work, again, the Flutter team is working on a thing called the Flutter Adaptive Scaffold that is supposed to be encapsulating some of this based on the Material 3 design specs. So this will eventually sort of be much more automatic than having to type all the code that Simon just did.
And to be clear, that
slightly different goals, but yeah.
Once you've got that code, you can reuse. It doesn't really change. Also, again, scaffold is about the whole page. Maybe you want to do a certain bit. I don't know, but I'm just going to give you an example of how you can do this kind of thing. Now, when it comes to that, now inside here, we cared about the width of the parent, but we also care about the, as we said earlier, is it portrait or landscape in this case? There is, by the way, orientation builder built into the framework. I'm just trying to show you how you might do it yourself so you can learn from this, right? There is actually a widget called, just to be clear, it's called orientation builder.
Right.
And its job is literally this. It only deals with orientation, doesn't tell you the device, if it's portrait or landscape, or if it's phone or tablet, right? But this basically is, it checks to see if this again, it's not the phone portrait landscape. So here's a good example here, right?
It's stupidly simple. It's stupidly simple. It's just greater than or less than in terms of height and width. Yes. That's all it knows how to do. It's stupidly simple.
So it's not really what we want. So
no, it's boring. Stupidly simple. I don't know what it does on a perfectly square device. I don't know if it just gets confused.
Did you do greater than or equal to is the question.
It spins. It just sits there and spins.
Ball is phone. Ball. Put those parameters. Ball is phone. Ball is.
On every tick, it changes back and forth. That would be great. Your layout's doing this.
So what we now got is
gravity. There we go. Gravity.
So the key is we want to take material out and pass that. It's the magical bit. We pass that as the child to our builder, and we pass the child from our function onto this. So what this means, I reset this. So you can see when this builds. So when this, remember, it's this widget, its context that registered to listen for the changes to the size of the platform, right? So this is the thing that's going to be rebuilt when those things change. This does not get rebuilt. So imagine this is really heavy content. Then when you rotate or do anything else, all those other widgets stay there. Oh, hello. Yes. Hopefully you're having a fun time. So... and as I said, so you can imagine here, and what we're now going to do next is if we're moving our horizontal padding into this builder, we're now saying that the padding that we want to use is going to be, and we can say here, H fraction. We say if it's a phone, then use 25%. And if it's a tablet, we're going to use even less, maybe 5%, 10% for padding? No, more. Sorry, more.
You want to use more, yeah.
40, let's say, right? And then we put that in our little calculation here. So now, if we're running on a phone, it's going to be this much, and if we're running on a tablet, it's going to be the other one. Now I can restart this, and it's going to look exactly the same. Fingers crossed. Good. That's what we want. Didn't break anything. Now, the problem here is that. As we said, I can't demo this because I'm just running on a phone. So I'm just going to change it for portrait. So now if I run this, you'll see it looks exactly the same in landscape. And when I change to portrait, it's behind. But there you go. Now it's taken up a lot.
Do you have the resizable emulator that you could run it on so that you could switch between?
I probably could do.
No worries. That's one way to be able to switch between them and see it.
I mean, we could do, but let's just. So here's an example there. So that they are 25%, 50% is used for the width. So that's how we're dynamically choosing our width based on that. Now, again, another thing I could do here, because I'm doing it padding in a scroll view, I'm doing it this way. But if I wanted to, what I could also do is wrap my child in a fractionally sized box, right? And then the fraction that I'm giving it is that H fraction or H factor. Width factor, maybe it's
naming,
right? So now
call it X. Call it X.
We get rid of it from here.
It goes this way. It's X,
and we get rid of this, and we can actually say divide by 2. Obviously,
this way is Y. That's Y.
No, this is the width factor of what we wanted to take up.
Yeah.
So now this is the inverse relationship. So it's 75%, and that stays as 50.
Yeah.
Okay. Fractor.
Yeah.
All right. So that is maybe a simplified version that does exactly the same job. If I restart, there it is, and we're just taking advantage of the fact that a widget.
Wow.
The widget is also doing the size calculation for us. Also, nicely, actually looking at this, it means that we can get rid of our layout builder now. So, because we're not using
it needs
that.
fireworks if it rotates.
Oh God. Right. Okay. So moving on. So let's cover a few little things. Should we cover a few little more things about this layout? So what do you see? Well, first of all, should we just pull some of these things out into?
Is there anything about the API you want to talk about? I mean, I think that's part of what the review was about, right?
What we're first do is take this point pick and I'm going to inline all these things first of all, because right now
can't you just refactor it inline? Isn't there like some way to say make this?
I have no idea, but this works for me.
I think there is. I've used it before. It's fun. Yeah, it's sort of like undoes extractor's method. You could kind of like inline his method. Boom. Scary almost.
Well, let's have a look. Does it let me do that?
See the bulb? The bulb there? Look.
No, that's why I'm pressing. It's this.
No inline. Huh? That's weird. Well,
could be a VS Code specific. That's the other thing, right?
Maybe it's because it has an argument and doesn't know what to do with the argument.
Yeah, I would argument with things as well.
Simon, you're behind by about 2 jokes. We beat you already on this score today.
Right. So we're just basically doing this because bringing one widget out isn't solving anything, and it's probably just complexifying your reading of what you're doing. So look, why did I extract these 2, right? There's not to say that we shouldn't extract things, and I would say what you'll probably be better off is extracting this entire column, right? So this entire column is
extract as
is
widget.
the result. So this is like the. We want me to use extract widget. I don't know how you even use that. I think I might turn it off, to be honest.
Maybe.
Will it come up on the?
It should be.
No.
It should.
No, I think I turned it off. I'll be honest with you.
How'd you turn it off?
I think I know what it is. It's a separate thing in here. I don't know. Is it refactor? Yeah, extract Flutter widget, and I can extract this into what should we call it? Underscore.
Naming again.
Point info. Point info.
Naming is your.
It's now giving me a dozen
with height, WordPress. What?
I did not want that. It's not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's because these shouldn't be passed over, right? So
It's looking at all those variables, so it has to extract those as parameters.
Right.
Yeah, it has to extract those. But really and truthfully, yeah, for example, those we kind of want to go into the new widget and not pass them over as parameters, but it doesn't know that. It can't make that determination. So it's just, I'm just going to do this, cut it out, and do stateless, and say coin info. I'm going to paste it in here. And then we're going to go, what do we actually need for this coin info? Pop it in here. So first of all, data. So we're going to need our data. So this is going to have a final map of string dynamic data. It's always nice to make model objects, so you have some definition you're working through rather than sprucing keys throughout your application. Random, like these keys down here, like this can get really, really. Well, first of all, you'll be repeating yourself all the time, and second of all, what happens when you put a spelling mistake? It's just really, yeah, it's just not great. So keep your serialization to serialization in one place. Right, moving back to this. So data, well, we can pass that across. And data snapshot to data, that's got me worried. Why are we doing that? So HTTP get is returning back a response. If it has data, then we have a response. So this is probably, you know why? It's because this is not typed. So this has become dynamic. So this is expected to be what's called a response object in this case. Here.
Future builder with a response. I haven't seen that before. Ooh.
Future response dynamic can't be assigned.
You're supposed to take the response and do something with it before sending it back to your future builder.
Yeah, normally.
There's a data layer in there somewhere. It's missing. You don't just go, here's what I heard on the wire. You can have it now. What?
And more trail.
Yeah, because then where's your error handling? Your error handling, if it doesn't convert right, is now right here in your view widget. That's not the right place to do that.
Okay, so and this is going to be required data because now it's a response object. We can say response, and here we go. Now we have the typed correct data of the response, and we were basically was running toString on the last one. We are more concerned about the data field. Is the documentation. I guess data toString would be the more appropriate in this case. Right, there's a problem because it could be null. Well, in this case, it's not. I'm gonna default it. Cool like that. Never. So anyway, we have our data. Add map, and then that's. Now we need to cast that over to our. So this is because when we get JSON, when we decode JSON, it's dynamic. It means it can be anything, right? Because JSON can come back as a list or an int, bool, null, so various things. We're going to guarantee that it's a map. We can't guarantee that it's a map of string to dynamic reasons. So what this does is this casts as a map, so we know it's a map, and then we can cast that map, and this will inherit these generics, not inherit. Infer. That's the word. Sorry, infer these parameters here. But I could easily just put these here, and it would be the same thing. So now we've done that. We're not using these directly, so we can pull these out, and instead we can pop them at the top of our build method here, so we extract those values that we're using. Now, one thing we can do is only using them, if we're only reading them and never changing them, we should put them as final. We can also put the types, since we're taking them out of a dynamic array here. I'm going to put on the right-hand side. This is my preference. You don't have to. There's no requirement for doing this. You can leave them on the left. I just prefer to see it this way. Right? Personal preference, really. Now, okay, so width and height. We're going to, I see what you're trying to do, and it's gone. Boom. And this now is just a decoration. So this is a box decoration. Sorry, decorated, but I always get that. Decorated. Right. Okay. So now we have no errors. We can restart and see if we continue working. Expected character. What went wrong?
It's got the wrong JSON in or something.
No, it's because our toString is on a map. It's already a map. So toString on a map means it doesn't show as JSON. It's trying to interpret that as JSON. So it looks, interestingly, Dio has decoded it for us because of the content types, and then what actually was happening in the previous code was that we were converting the map back to a JSON string, and then decoding that JSON string again. So
what? That's insane.
So basically, all we need to do is do this as map, and I know this because the speech marks are missing here, because the keys in when you dump a map in Dart to the console, it doesn't have quote marks around the keys. JSON does. Right. So that's why I'm making. Now, if I restart this, it should
be different.
Ta-da! Oh, so we don't have to do any of the JSON decoding that's done for us by Dio. Lovely.
Yeah.
So
we lost the logo.
We did, and I can tell you why. It's because.
Did you take it out? I missed it.
What is the problem with that code in the middle there?
Which one? The decorated box?
Yep.
String.
It has no size. It has no height because
it's a decoration.
Right. It decorates the content that's already there. It should not be a decorated box. It should not be a decoration at all. It should just be
the image. Yeah.
So that's that. Don't get me wrong. If you try and put something in the background, you want that. So there's the image, and then what we can then do is
put it in a
size box, aspect ratio. Now this does not. There's reasons why you might want to do things one way or another. I want to make sure this is always remains square. So aspect ratio is. And then we can also put that in a limited, is it limited box? I think it is max height or something. Max height, maybe something like 64. There you go. So we're actually always straighten it. Now it's actually filling the width, I believe, if I've got my calculations correct. Yeah. So it's actually filling the width, but as image widget itself will paint the widget in the center because it has an implied alignment. If you look at here, you can actually override the alignment here. So if you want to align it differently, you can do that or repeat it or do these other fun things. Yeah. The particularly interesting points to mention is that width and height. Now, if you notice how small I'm showing it on the screen, what I actually want to do is also pass height 64. Now that means it's always going to be 64 high. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. So now if I got rid of my limited box, it means I've always decoded it as.
That's more than 64.
It's blurry. The aspect ratio has forced it. So let me go back. So if I got rid of the aspect ratio and put it center here. So, sure. Yeah, there you go. So we've achieved the same thing here, right? This, however, is a bit different. So it doesn't force aspect ratio square on the image. It forces a maximum height. What's nice about this is when it decodes that image from the network, it's only going to take up 64 dips or 64 dips worth of pixels in your memory. So you saw how big it was. Well, that might be up 2 megabytes, but when it's 64 high, it's like 100 kilobytes. So that's what the difference is when you put width and height on the image itself, right? Just a key point. So anyway, back to our layout here. So let's go up. Right. Okay. So the problem, every time this reloads, it's going to go make the network request every single time, and that's because during build it creates the future and pass it to Future Builder. This is a lovely video that Randall has made on his channel on YouTube about stream builders and future builders. There you go. There's your plug there, Randall.
Oh, should I put it in then? I'll put it in.
Put the link in. Yeah,
I am.
So again, the problem here is that it does that, and there's various ways and simple ways around this. The simplest way is just to cache it once, but I think that we need to understand how this is being used first of all. So this is all quite complicated. So
you put it in a future provider, a RiverPod future provider is all you need to do.
Yes, right.
Yeah, it fixes everything. All your data problems, all swept under the rug by RiverPod.
So here's an interesting one. So we have this drop-down list of coin
pushed into your junk drawer. Everything gets pushed into your junk drawer.
No, that's a different one. That's a different state management solution.
Oh yeah, that's right. The one that ends in X.
Yes.
Drawer. Yeah. So we're gonna see. So selected coin is a string, apparently. So we're gonna say final string.
Selected unicorn.
Yes, it can be null because it's blank at the beginning. And then items in this case. Now we're going to fix this. This is, don't get me wrong, it works, but it's really unreadable, right? It's really simple ways to make this more readable. So first of all, we want to return a list. So return a list. Forget about widget on this function for a second. We want to make a list of drop-down list item, drop-down menu item. The fact that it's string, sure, we can enforce it's a string. Right. So now we can inside here do a for final coin in coins. That puts the for loop inside of the list constructor. And then for each element, we build this. And what we're doing is putting coin here.
So I don't know if you're gonna address it or not, but you mentioned it just a second ago that it can be null because at the beginning it is, but the dropdown itself actually doesn't have a null entry, right? Yeah. It doesn't have a blank to start with. It's actually showing a value, but it's not reading that value, right? It's not starting with that.
Yeah, so I think we need to.
So I don't know if we want to add like a placeholder kind of thing, or if we want it to automatically pick the first one on start, so that it is never null.
Let's see where that takes us in a second. Right. So now if I take this.
Yeah. Placeholder is often a good one because you want to make sure if the user chooses something that they have explicitly chosen something. If you don't have a reasonable default, that's a good UI
I think
tip.
In this case, you could probably do either one. I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to just pick the first one in the list and then they could pick a different one if they want. But I could easily see saying, no, let's just make it hey, select a coin.
You could default it to Dogecoin. Dogecoin's the favorite. Yeah.
So basically, we want to get callback
or unicorn coin
from our widget once a new coin's been selected from that list. So we can now do, it's called a value change. It's just a nice, I'll give it a type. This is actually what's built into the frame, and there's also the value setter, value getter, and these are just very common function declarations that you might see, common signatures. If you're looking for one, it might be in here. So you might want to use the ones that are already declared. Anyway. So
and the way I find that file is I type void callback and then tab through it to get to that file because I can never remember the name of that file, but it's wherever void callback is defined.
And then this.
We should
Something like
make
that.
our own
That's true.
coin. Let's make a dash coin or something.
Yeah, Dash coin.
That's pretty cool, actually. If you're using if you're using anything and you're using the word dynamic, it probably means you're doing it wrong. I mean, probably there's reasons to use dynamic, but
You were doing it wrong.
But you're doing it wrong.
Generic.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not wrong. It's just wrong.
It's just wrong.
shut up.
Hey, we're the color commentators. What else are we going to do? You're the one that's
Yeah.
the star. You're the one that's
Coding away.
typing stuff.
I'm not.
We're just like, yeah, it looks like you made it most of the way down the field there.
Yeah.
That's all we get to do.
Right. So
That
that's
answers the
that's like a nice sort of way of doing this. We can always pass in. I'll just put that in line, but you can always have that read from somewhere.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we already have a dash coin.
Oh no.
Oh.
It's taken.
Flutter coin.
No.
So I need to address this as well. This is a red herring.
Yeah.
Don't do this. First of all,
Red
blank
herring.
container. Blank container is bad anyway. But also, you're doing this because you want to get rid of the underline. To get rid of the underline on a drop down, there's one widget that you wrap your widget with. Which we're going to find funny is was it under? Come on, not make me type something. Hang on, under. Line input border. No, there it is. I knew it was there. This will make it off. Drop down button hide underline.
Is there a widget named that? No.
Basically, it's an inherited widget that its only job is to hide the underline on drop down button.
No.
Why? What?
What are they thinking in Mountain View? What are they smoking in Mountain View?
It's
I
the
want
way
some.
the framework is. It's the very first one, but that's always a thing. So, right, so now we've got that. No more issues in our layout. Right, let's fix that. So if I restart, we've got no functions. Our things laid out. All right, restart. Let's see what happens.
You know what? We need to get that into one of the trivia questions on Flutter Friday. That would be cool. See if anybody can get that one.
It's the easiest way to remove the underline from a drop down.
And then have 6 widgets or four choices that are all really weird names, except that's one of them.
Yeah. Nobody will pick it.
I'll tell the @sign guys to put it in. That'll be fun.
Okay. So there it is. And it's filling the width at the moment, but that's fine. So now we want to center that in the width. And so we're going to get a drop down and say wrap with unconstrained box.
And this is actually getting live data, right? This is the API's flying.
I think so. Yeah. I think, it's using the public API,
Wow.
I think.
Wow. Cool. Now make it a graph. Let's draw a graph.
Let's get a chart. All right.
Yeah.
All right, thinking that I'll probably start. Actually, but anyway, you could do that. That does the same job. As in this case, it's practically the same job as center. So I'm just going to do the center because the column again is doesn't give a min height to the. Anyway, so that's back to that list. Right, so now we're changing it. Yeah, it is changing it, definitely. Good. All right, just making sure.
We're slowly approaching 3 hours, so we probably should figure out like not too many more tasks to do.
Okay. All right, because this can go until the count.
Oh, there's lots
You
of
can
stuff
do
it
this
should
forever.
be, yeah.
We've seen this. We've seen you do this forever. So yeah, we can start wrapping up. Just I'm thinking of our home audience. And the people in cars listening to this show, they're probably already at their destination, waiting in their parking lot now to see if we're going to finish.
Someone just said Simon's PC is faster than my M1 Mac. How is that possible? It's a PC.
Oh,
Shots fired.
burn!
It's actually an array of Raspberry Pis that he's put together.
This is a Raspberry Pi mainframe.
Yes.
Right. So, all right, talking about layouts. I think that we've spoken a bit about a few different things, and we've done some refactoring work.
Yes.
Yeah, as we said about this future build, let's just sort that out, right? So each time this builds, we want it to validate that the selected coin has or has not changed, and then generate a new future if then. Yeah. Not every time the build takes place. So we're going to extract it out, make a stateful widget, call it what? Coin details or something. I don't know. Put that widget down here, and then we pass it in our coin that we want the details for. No longer the selected coin because it's not coins for this widget. And the coin that's passed in when we first start it first starts up. We want to read that coin, widget.coin, and that's the one that we want.
This is a good point there, Simon.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah.
Well, we started to, right? We started going down.
Yeah, and then we got distracted by layout.
Connectivity package
by blinky lights.
Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to do something.
5 issues ago.
So, but yeah, I mean that's what we would do, right? You use connectivity there's a stream from that you can subscribe to, and it'll let you know then when it changes, and you could put that onto your page. Then that if you lose connectivity, then you could have it display something on the screen saying, "Hey, you've lost connectivity." Maybe it's a banner at the top, across the top, or something. Many different ways you could do it. And then once connectivity is restored, you could pull it back off, and you could use that then even as a gate to some of these things to not try and do work, I should say. Maybe you disable the drop down or whatever it is, so that people can't select something and then have it go try and fail because you have no connectivity.
And also, ultimately, you want an error page of some kind, so nobody's getting a red screen when they're sitting at home. Yeah. So that also needs to be addressed as well. But that should be true for every production app. Should not give you a red screen ever, no matter what. It should always have an error wrapper that does something. Even if it's just put a pleasant picture of a cat on the screen or something. You should have something there.
A picture of Simon coding.
Yeah, like this. And animation like this.
Simon is frantically working on getting the internet back on for you.
Yes, sir. We ought to make a package of that. Simon Working is the name of the package. It'll be there soon. It's an error widget that wraps your widget.
Since it's only one line, I'm just going to put this in here. But to be honest, like this is, we spoke about this before. In fact, Randall said about this before. You don't really call the APIs direct. You don't call the APIs directly. This should be private, first of all, and then the get, like the specific thing, like API get or whatever this is, right? And then what we actually want is something like map of string to dynamic. String coin. So you've declared your interface for the API. Then this can call like return API get this. Now you've got all your API declarations about what's all what you're trying to get in one place. This is about give yourself some single use principle responsibility, whatever it's called. So we get that. That's going to give us a response. Now, if we make this asynchronous.
And don't use interpolation to create URLs. I want to keep saying that again and again every week until people stop doing that.
Yes.
Don't use interpolation to create your URLs.
Right. And then, response.
Do you want to explain why you say that, Randall?
Yes. Well, if you're familiar with the term Bobby tables from SQL, it's the same thing. It's basically the rules for turning data into parts of a URI are complex and people get it wrong. And what happens is you start out and you go, well, I just put this word here in this string, right? Well, what if the word has a space in it? Now you got to remember to escape it properly. There's all sorts of stuff, but there is already a very good constructor called URI with a lot of parameters where you're handing it values that get escaped in the 6 different ways it has to get escaped in various parts of the string. That's the hard part, is that there are various different things you have to do in different parts of the string to escape it. And unless you learned all these rules back in the mid-90s like I did, you won't know them all. Trust me, you won't know them all.
Yep.
Yeah. Like what the %20 is for, and when do you escape the ampersand versus not escaping it?
Yeah.
There are things to know.
Yes.
So,
one of my favorite rants: do not create URLs by interpolation.
Right. So now we can never return back a null. It should throw. We want it to throw an error. Every future can throw an error. Treat it as if it throws an error. And then in this case, get coin, and coin does the hard job. It also means that DO is no longer referenced all across our application. It's only in the API piece. So now this is called get coin. We pass it the coin. And what we actually get back is not a response, which is a DO specific model. It's the model that we expect. So also, this is not nullable. It's late. It's always going to be there. If it's not, then the app didn't get compiled correctly. That would be a problem. What did I? Yes, because this should be a map. Of string to dynamic. I'm going to show you something really, really cool in a second. And you're both going to go, ooh,
the moment we've been waiting for.
We do this every day, every time.
Type def. This equals
JSON equals JSON.
I saw Randall go on a little bit of a rant about type def in Discord last week. I think somebody was. They didn't understand what type def was doing, and so he was explaining it to them.
So what we've done
sounds
here
like me. I don't remember. It was one of these blurry moments, I'm sure, in the past. But
Well, what I've done here is that we've done a type alias. So map of string to dynamic is now also a coin response, or really is coin response is this. So now I can return that. I can now replace coin response in the future with a proper model object, but it's just nice rather than having to type this generic all over the place. Right. So now when I go back to the home screen, I'm making a future of coin response. Right. And
you haven't really done a good type def until you've had a type def with type parameters. Oh, those are cool. Those are cool.
And now we get rid of this because it's already a map. And in fact, this can go straight into here. It doesn't need to be cast anymore. Handle all that on the back end. That's the way it should be. All right. What did I break because the format had stopped working? I broke something up here. Ooh.
Extra comma.
Oh, no, it's because I removed that widget and didn't put it back in. Whoops. Yeah, I'll do that now. Coin is the selected coin.
No.
And then again, API service, don't need that in here anymore. Don't need any of this. And our default of Stellar, wonderful. But we actually don't want that to ever be nullable, I think. What I want to do is enforce non-null. This is good for what I want because I know I can never get null back in my drop-down response, I believe. Because we're always going to have a starting value. If you start with null, you're going to get null back if that's the one that's selected still. In this case, we have a starting value. We're not going to get that. So, okay. And now we want to wrap when details expanded. Okay, that expander is going to get removed. So let me explain this. So first of all, the expander being in here, if I want to use this widget in a non-flex container, it would break. So we don't want you keep your margins in the parent widget, keep your expandeds and your layout. Layout is done by the parent. So try and keep like the constraints being passed down by the parent. So in this case, if I move that from there, I now wrap our coin in expanded. This is very directly obvious that the column is a center followed by an expanded. Right, restart. It should look no different. And we have our drop down, and we choose it, and it changes, and it all works. Lovely.
Cool.
So, what was the question? You said there was one about like
Splash
screen.
Oh, it was remember when we first started, the splash screen just kind of sat there because of the failures.
I thought it was a splash screen. It wasn't splash. It was the actual application. It's because the UX.
Yeah, it was the way it's written. Yeah.
However, I will mention that what we spoke about, the connectivity, is something that would be really simple to do in one widget, which we could do right now, and we'll call it a day, I think, because we did start it off, and people kind of were questioning that. I do want to find those two text widgets and center them. So what we were talking about earlier, it's the font size that should be centered here. Did I say font size? I mean the text.
You mean text, yeah.
Text align center. So the text widget spans the whole width and it centers the text inside it. This means if it wraps to the center where the fonts maybe are too large to fill the screen. Okay, so we were talking about like something to display on the screen. I think this about card, underneath this about card, we should have connectivity banner. How's that for everyone? And then we're going to make that widget up. Then we say full connectivity banner. And let's look at its visuals. Its visuals is going to be a piece of material. What do you do? Piece of material. It's final. No, this is hard coded here for a minute. Don't want to make things overly complicated right now. Colors red. Child text. These. Connect to the internet. To use
the internet. Oh, the internet. That's what helps.
You've unplugged your internet. Plug it back in.
Yes.
And we'll add a padding.
Join us. Join us.
And there is actually material banner. It comes down from the top of the screen, but anyway. Okay, so we also have a snack bars come out of the bottom, but we actually want this to be persistent. So material padding, and then all we need to do is put a style.
So you want it to be like a modal? No. Oh, we just want it to be part of the screen.
No, just part of the screen. So it's part of the
part of the layout at the top.
Yeah, but here's the question: is that going to work if the text takes up more than the screen?
Well, we can test that, right?
Yep.
Don't do as I do. Use the theme. But right now, I'm just like in fast demo mode. Right. Oh God, it's too big. And that
Once
padding.
you put in a const.
I can't. And the vertical, let's do A, and then horizontal. Oh, that feels good to me. Right. Now we can make it constant. Okay, there you go. That's good enough, right? Like a banner across the bottom. Please connect to the internet to use this app. Block. Okay.
Cool.
So now we want to show or hide that based on the connectivity. So what we do is we have our lovely connectivity package that we added earlier. And if we go back to the web page, we can read the instructions. So there's a connectivity instance. That's what we want. So final. And we bring it in from our lovely library. There we go. And connectivity instance on connectivity changed. That's perfect. And that is a stream we can listen to. Yes. So we could do a stream builder. That's one option. And we could just listen to that. I kind of feel like we don't want to do that because we want to get the initial connectivity. Initial connectivity, again, is check connectivity, which is a future. So what we actually want to do here is start this future up. And then
just a future and then a stream and then like
yeah, I mean, like, this is the thing, right? So here's our result.
You just never know. It just won't tell you right away. Why not? It knows. Why doesn't it tell you?
I think kind of like it's complicated, right? Like,
I think it knows already. It knows to put those little bars on the top of the screen that has Wi-Fi.
But what I'm trying to say is the application cannot go to Android directly. It has to go asynchronously.
I know the reason. I'm just joking.
So, okay, so we check the connectivity and we get the result. And then what we're going to do is say, store that here and say current result. Yes, and we should probably
see all this is one line in a stream provider in RiverPod.
Oh, shut your face. We'll start off.
Then ref watch that, and then you just do that. Never mind.
And then we can call if mounted
set state. So quaint.
And then shush.
Ref notify listeners.
Yeah, right.
And we want a late final stream. And we can, again, I can use the stream builder, and then I can have to wrap it in a future builder. Believe it or not, this ends up being a lot simpler and a lot more direct. So
you would think.
Connectivity. That's actually, we make that nullable. Okay, so now all we need to do is say basically this exact line here. So I'm going to bring that out and say on connectivity changed. If mounted when we set it, and that result down here. Now we can call that with our result here. And then once we've got that result, we subscribe, and again, call that with our result here. It's this result. Then when we dispose of our widget, we want to cancel that. And let's be clear here, if this is mounted, do we always make sure we unsubscribe? Okay, so there is another way of tackling this that makes it a bit more readable. So we can say do something like future void init connectivity. And instead, instead of using the then, which kind of looks to me awful, we can do this instead, and conversely pop that in here.
You know, I'm just looking at the connectivity plugin should actually give you a stream that fires immediately on listen that has the current state, because everybody's then writing these same 10 lines of code over and over and over again instead.
We know. It's a bit of PR. There you go. Make a RiverPod package that exposes connectivity as a RiverPod thing. Go for it.
That'd be trivial. But this package should fix it. The package should fix it correctly. Yeah. And it's Flutter community. It means we can update it.
Yeah.
So I said
We
update
can
it.
do a poll. Okay.
Maybe that's next week's live coding. We will create the PR
Yeah.
and
We can fix Connectivity Plus next week.
We can fix it. We can rebuild him. We can make him stronger.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, so we basically want to say is connected.
Yeah, this is extra work. This is busy work.
Box, an empty widget. Oops.
Wouldn't it be funny if that's the way it worked anyway? That it initially sent you something on listen anyway? That'd be funny.
That would be the easiest thing, yeah. So what we can actually do here, hang on, is say a nice little thing you can do as well. Say something like this: we'll get is connected, and then here we can say if our result is equal to connectivity result. I think there's like just care that it's connected, so not none, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on, we could say explicitly say, oh, you must be on Wi-Fi or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that, people. Please don't do that.
No.
My 5G connection is much better than Wi-Fi.
I think what I'm going to do is put the default
and free. Well, I mean,
the race restart and banner is not there. Good. Scroll down. Okay, cool. And then if I go into airplane mode, there's the banner and scrolling. Scrolls just
worked. Yep.
Nice.
So, airplane mode off. Give it a second to connect. There you go. Blink, disappears.
Wow.
And if you really wanted it to, you could actually wrap this in an animated size, and then it would like from the bottom, right? Or animate slide, whatever it's called. Yeah.
It should make a Jacob's ladder that just goes. Bzz, 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 you're online.
Right. I think Randall needs to.
I think he's at the end.
I just dated myself by calling anything a Jacob's ladder. I tell you, it's like.
Now remember, it was karaoke night, so he's going on like 4 hours of sleep. So.
Oh
that's
yeah,
right.
that's right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna. I don't know if the developer of this is still around. I'm sure they're going to give me write access to their repo, and then I can push this up on a branch. But yeah, I think there's obviously some improvement in terms of colors and so on.
Still there?
I don't know if she's still there.
Don't know. It was earlier, but
yeah.
So
not replying yet.
I
so
will,
maybe not.
For those that are following along after the fact, look at the description because I will add the link there to the code base. Yes, she's here. So I'm going to pop the link in the chat actually, and then this will be to the if I can find the link, this will just be to the repository. And then let me pop this in the chat here to everyone. I can find the button. I've really lost the button. Here it is. There we go. So that's the code base by. Oh, she's here. There she is. There, I see you. Yes. She says yes. Look. She's on stream. Hello. Yes. Yeah. So what I'll do is I will push a branch. If she gives me give me write access to your repo, and then I'll just push on a branch, and then you can do whatever you want with it. Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I know it was a long stream, but I feel like people like that kind of live coding aspect of things and interaction and learn.
Next week we fix the stream. We fix the stream on connectivity. That's our live coding for next week.
Do that if you want to do that. That's why not.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I actually have a PR I need to go fulfill on Flutter, the repo itself.
Oh, cool.
That's something else I need to do. Anyway. Bye. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And think of your
question. 165 hours. 165 because we're 3 hours in.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, John.